Hello, everyone, and welcome to our afternoon session of the Luso American Education Foundation, the 46th conference of the Luso American Education Foundation. By the way, one of our panelists was there the very first one, but he was only 5 years old. And so the very first one of the Luso American Education Foundation conferences, now 45 years ago, this is our 46th one. And the title, of course, as all of you know from this morning's sessions, Navigating the Future. This afternoon, the second part of the title, Navigating the Future, is Portuguese Americans in California, education, I should say, in the California Portuguese diaspora. So I want to welcome our guests and welcome each and every one of you following us here on the webinar and those following us on Facebook Live. And of course, our events are recorded and they'll be also part of our PBBI Fresno State YouTube channel. And at the same time, part of our Portuguese oral history project, because this is oral history as we talk about the Portuguese American experience in California. I want to once again thank the four panelists for being part of this conversation that we hope will be fruitful for the Portuguese American community and, of course, indeed, at a national level, but certainly at a statewide level as we concentrate on the state of California. So I'm going to ask the four guests to be kind enough to introduce themselves. I mean, I could introduce them. I know them well, but probably I'm going to leave something behind. I would like them to take 5 to 7 minutes and introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their connection to the Portuguese community and what they do, of course, professionally. And then from there, we'll start the discussion. And I'm going to just do this in alphabetical order. So with the alphabetical order with the last name. So Portuguese usually is with the first name. We'll start with the last name. So Carvalho Cooley, it's both C's. So we'll start with our good friend Linda Carvalho Cooley. Dr. Linda Carvalho Cooley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Denise. I was like going, oh, alphabetical by first name. I'm good, but no, because I thought for sure Duarte would be going before me. So my name is Linda Carvalho Cooley. I am a professor at Reedley College, which is a community college in the Central Valley of California. I've been at Reedley College now for almost 20 years. I also am a guest lecturer at Fresno State University teaching upper division communication courses. I am a communication professor. I earned my doctorate in educational leadership along with my good friend Lucy, and my master's was in emotional communication. I was born and raised in California. I am a first generation Portuguese American. My father was born on the island of Terceira, and he's fairly well known in this area because he had a Portuguese radio broadcast for many years at 2 radio programs and ran festas in the Central Valley. And my father was Antonio Carvalho. He also helped a lot of people become American citizens, or to find jobs, or to find a place to live, or to get a car. There was a lot of things. So growing up in the Portuguese community, I felt very connected, more so to the Portuguese community than I did to the American community. We would travel every year back to the Azores to stay with my grandparents, and which was wonderful because it really reinforced the language. And since then, of course, went on, got married, had children, and my husband and I have recently purchased a home in the Azores about 4 years ago, and we have our own house there now. So we go every year and have immersed ourselves into the community there. So much so that my all-American husband is now a member of the Philharmonic and the Serra Ribeirinha, the marching band. So he is the Americano. I think that's o apelido now. I think that is his official nickname, is o Americano. But we do have a home in Feiteira, and we absolutely love it. And that is my connection.
Fantastic. Thank you, Linda. And so from C, we'll go to, RS, but we have a problem. Zek is still trying to, she has an issue right now with her audio and her camera as well. And so hopefully we'll get that figured out. So we'll go to Duarte, please.
Okay. I'm Duarte Silva, originally from the Ilha de São Jorge. and immigrated to the United States when I was 14 years old, meaning that I completed my elementary education in the Azores and then connected here. Did a little bit of elementary still here, and then on to high school. I just went to my 50th annual high school reunion, and that was a very interesting reunion to go to. Then I pursued my college education. I received my BA and credential to teach at the secondary level. Then went on to get my master's degree in curriculum development and professional learning from CSU Sacramento, and then my doctorate degree from the University of San Francisco, a good Jesuit institution that instilled in me a new way of looking at the world. My proudest moments in education were teaching at the high school level, a place that I always return to, and I love always supporting the K-12, because that's where it all begins. If we don't have a solid, education, through grades kindergarten through 12, we're not going to get the desirable candidates we'd like to see at the institutions of higher learning. So kudos to all my colleagues in elementary education. I also recently had a reunion here. I am sitting right now at the ranch in Oakdale, and not the Stanford background that you see. And I had a reunion with the students that I taught, 40 plus years ago when I was in K-12, and that was a very fulfilling activity. Because they're all leading, very productive lives, and doing, a lot of them went into education and so forth. Most recently, I spent 32 years of my professional life at Stanford University, in which I did a lot of work in, curriculum and development and the preparation of teachers, and then played a lot on the policy arena. And that's usually what I connected with Denise and doing some of the things that we needed to do, both for Portuguese language instruction in California. I was a commissioner of education in California for 4 years. And during that time, I learned how to navigate the political system and trying to get things done when we need to get them done. I retired almost 4 years ago, come January, from Stanford University. I am at the status of emeritus, and I have learned that encompasses a lot. There's a lot of expectations placed on emeritus. And I was just there last Monday to welcome, of course, the president of Portugal, and help facilitate the whole visit. There's a lot to a visit. I also learned that. And it was a very fruitful conversation. And then most recently, I've been spending quite a bit of time doing policy advising, both at the state level and in Washington, D.C., and taking time to go to the Azores and spending some time there, like Linda and like Lucy. That's a must for us to recharge our batteries. So that's pretty much encompasses my life, professional life, and personal life as well.
Indeed, and you could go on because you have a lot more, and Linda as well. And now, since we still have, I don't know if Zeka can get on a little bit, so she's still trying to resolve some issues. So we'll go to Lucy Van Sayok. Lucy Ferreira Van Sayok. I always must put the Ferreira in there.
Hello, everyone. So yes, my main name's Ferreira, and I was born in the Azores, in the island of Terceira. We moved over here when I was 8 years old. And my dad was very involved in the community when we lived in Terceira. And then when we transitioned over to the United States, that continued. We lived in Hanford. So I actually completed elementary school in Hanford, and then transitioned to Tulare. But as soon as we came over, my dad, like I said, was very involved in the Portuguese community. So he was involved in the Portuguese band, no Centro Português de Informação e Cultura, and so the choir, the folklore, all of those things. And my parents, having been born and raised in Terceira, we weren't allowed to do a lot with the American community. So my only option really was the Portuguese. And honestly, I loved all those things. I love the folklore, as danças de carnaval, all of those things that my dad was involved in. So that's really my connection to the Portuguese community. I'm very proud of the fact that my 3 children speak Portuguese. My daughter is a sophomore in high school, and she's fluent. When we went to the Azores this summer, she was so excited to show off her language skills. And whenever they tried to speak to her in English, she spoke to them in Portuguese and was really excited about that. So that's one of my proudest, one of the things that I'm really proud about, because my husband, like Linda, my husband's not Portuguese, but we really tried to maintain both cultures in our home and raise our kids in both cultures. So this is my 24th year in education. When I went to elementary school in Hanford, then we moved to Tulare. So I graduated from Tulare Union High School. My father passed away when I was 16. My family went through a lot of struggles during that time, with me being the oldest. My dad had always instilled in his children that we needed to make sure we took advantage of the education. That's what he could make sure that we could focus on, was on our education. I took AP classes and did extremely well, but when my dad passed away, going away to college was not an option. So I went to COS, Fresno Pacific, got a teaching credential, started teaching. I really enjoy the kids and science. So I majored in science, I thought I wanted to teach elementary, but really high school is my passion. And then I ended up getting my master's. And then I had a friend who came to me when I was pregnant with my Sophia, who's 8 years old, gonna be 8 years old. And she said, do you want to do a doctorate program? And I'm thinking, I'm pregnant, no. Well, she convinced me. So Linda and I, Melanie was my friend, but I met Linda through the doctoral program and ended up getting my doctorate. And it was great. I would recommend it to anybody. And I think it really has helped me as a superintendent of the high school district. It really has helped me with my leadership skills and supporting our students and our staff. So I think I kind of answered all the questions. I went a little everywhere.
You did as always, yes. And I should say that I'm biased because Alberto Ferreira is still one of my dearest friends, although he's passed away so many years ago. There was important work done when in Tulare, and the community that we have Tulare was marked by what happened when Alberto was here, and we were young and probably naive, about a lot of things, but we were utopian, so we believed in a lot of different things that kind of, I think, solidified some of the things that are still going on. And so a little bit. I don't know, Zeka, can you hear me before I go further? We'd like to have you introduce yourself, but I think you might still be having some issues. If you can at least hear you, you could do that without the camera on. That would be awesome. If not, we're going to transition.
He doesn't.
No, she's not. So she must be having some issues. You might want to reconnect. That sometimes happens. We have to get off and reconnect. We will go to let's see here. I want to share with you this slide that I think could be a good topic for conversation. This is part of the work that was done by some of you might know or have heard, Dr. Dulce Scott, and Dr. Dulce is a professor in Indiana, and she did some work, does a lot of work for PALCUS, and she did some work for the California Portuguese American Coalition about taking the census information and applying it to the state of California and to the Portuguese American community. One of the slides was this one that I'm going to try to share with everybody, which is on education. And I think maybe we could look at it and all kind of take this in and move the conversation to what we really would like to discuss within the next 40 minutes or so. And so hopefully everyone can see the slide. Yes, great.
Yep.
So this is a slide that was done this is based on the 2010 census. As you know, we don't have numbers from the 2020 yet. We have basic numbers, but we don't have all of the ethnic numbers, and we don't have all of the different things that are still needed, to come up with information for 2020. So this is based on 2010, but it's updated by the community surveys that are done, the American community surveys that are done on a yearly basis with the help of the census. And so these are the numbers for some of the counties in California and how we are as far as college degree, and basically a bachelor's or higher. We don't have the separation there between bachelors and then, of course, masters and PhDs. So this is basically, as you can see, there's room for growth in just about everywhere. Except San Francisco, and even then there's always room for growth. But in San Francisco County, the number of Portuguese with a bachelor plus degrees are 62%. But, San Francisco is a unique situation, as all of you know, because there are limited amount. It's a very special community. It's not a community that immigrated there. I mean, you do migrate somewhere, but a lot of times they migrate there from other areas because of professional reasons. But if we look, Tulare 19, Stanislaus is 16, San Joaquin, some of the counties, San Joaquin is 16, San Diego's quite a bit better at 36, San Bernardino 18. And if we look, Merced County is only 11%, Kings County only 16%. And these are Portuguese Americans. Of the 300 and nearly 50,000 Californians who identified of being of Portuguese ancestry. So it looks like, as you can see, that in our rural counties, we have an issue still. We still have lower levels. I mean, and again, these numbers might have fluctuated because it's been 10 years ago. There's been some updates by the American Community Survey, but not total updates. So there might be, another growth of 3 or 4%, or maybe even 5%. But we're still having some issues. If we look at these numbers compared to 35, 40 years ago, obviously they're great, because at that time our issue was completing high school, and now we can see that we're right on par with everybody else. 93, 92s, 80 something. So we're right on par with people graduating from high school that are Portuguese. We still have some areas that we need to get a little bit better, but the issue is we still don't have the numbers, as you can see there, 19%, 16%, lots of 16%, and even low 20s. Riverside is 24, and El Dorado 23, and Alameda, 23%. So what are your thoughts on something like this, of course? And what are your thoughts on how we can, as educators, as folks who have advanced degrees, who have doctorates, how do we change this pendulum? What can we do in education at all levels, whether we are a superintendent such as Lucy, whether we are a professor at junior college or a 4-year university, whatever we're professor at, whether we're emeritus like Duarte, who has a lot of time to dedicate to these things now. How do we think about this, and how do we move these numbers? Because like I said, other than San Francisco, even the ones that are 30 and 32, we need to increase, but certainly the ones in rural counties. And I'll probably start maybe with Duarte, and then we'll move to everyone else, Lucy, Linda, and Zeka, if we can get her on working on this. So Duarte, your thoughts on these numbers, and your thoughts. I mean, it didn't surprise me. I don't know if it surprised anybody. It didn't surprise me. I knew we were still low in some areas, but as a community, and a community that has not had any immigration for a long time. I mean, Lucy's family was one of the last to leave Terceira Island. There hasn't been any immigration at all in the in the late 90s, and very little already in the late 80s, and of course certainly nothing in the 21st century in the last 22 years. So Duarte, your thoughts?
Sure. The data is always revealing, and even in the good counties, if you want to call them that, 45%, 60%, that means we're only halfway there. So I would not be celebrating that when we're only about 50% of getting our students in to pursue a college degree. Yeah, I would love to see this data desegregated even more so, because I suspect that most of these are even women rather than men. And because when I look at the statistics here in California and across the nation regarding it's in the Portuguese community, it's like women are 3-4 to 1 in getting the college's degree, which is in reverse to the American society. Women are catching up, and they're almost there. We're almost at 50-50 with women getting as many college degrees as men, but it's totally a reverse in the quote unquote Portuguese community. So there's a lot of work to be done here. The other purpose is we have not done a good job in the Portuguese community to really explain the purpose of getting a college degree, because certainly we cannot use the economic argument That will not work in a Portuguese community, because any one of us on screen right now can point out to success. And if success is measured by dollars and cents, and that seems to be the measure in the Portuguese community, we cannot make that argument. We need to really make the argument with many different factors of why a college degree is going to benefit the individual, is going to benefit the future generations, and certainly is going to benefit the community. So we need to come up with much more 21st century arguments for getting a college education rather than 19th century, which across the board in the American society and all the other ethnic groups, it was the economic argument. I remember showing my students in the 70s and 80s, the high school students, there she is, the high school students, and with the parents, particularly the Latino parents, it was showing how much a student would be making economically between a high school degree and a college degree. That doesn't work anymore in the 21st century, and certainly not with our Portuguese community. So we really need to come up with very fresh 21st century arguments to make why college is relevant to individuals and the community.
Thank you, Duarte. So we'll get to the other two, and then we'll introduce Zeka. So Lucy, your thoughts on this as well, and anything in that chart that kind of surprised you?
Honestly, I know, like, for example, I think the high school data is a little outdated, because right now, if you look at the last 10 years, even at our district, we increased our graduation rate in the last 10 years by like 15%. Right now, our graduation rate overall for all of our students is right around 97%. So we have a really high graduation rate. So I think the data is a little off in that regards, but it's 10 years old, so that makes sense. I was a little surprised. I think that when I think about Tulare, and I think about the Portuguese community in Tulare, and some of the people from my generation, I think a lot of them have gone on to get a college degree. So I was kind of surprised, a little bit surprised by how low it is. I'm curious, does that include, like, that's everybody who's of Portuguese descent, correct?
And that's Tulare County, so it includes
Tulare
County, so it includes Visalia and Exeter and
Okay.
and Porterville and Tipton, all those areas.
All those areas. So, and I think that we are making headway there. I think again, it's like Duarte was saying, it's how do we get our students to understand the importance of college and the importance of an education? How do we get them to that point? And then the connections too, because I think sometimes from my perspective, kids don't understand. Like when you live in Tulare and Visalia and Hanford, you're only aware of the options around us, right? Sometimes there's other things out there and other opportunities, and they don't see that. They don't see the relevance. And I think bringing that to our students, I just had a meeting yesterday with UC Merced, and I have this program that we're going to partner with them. And if students earn a 3.5 GPA, if they are completing the A through G in English and math, it's an early admission program. So they are automatically accepted into UC Merced, which is really close to our area. Sometimes we also have the issue of going away and students and families not feeling really comfortable with kids going away. Well, it's really close by and it's a UC. So I think more of those programs, how do we create those ties with, or continue to build on those ties with Fresno State, so that kids have opportunities and options, and they can also see, they know what they want to pursue. Like, I want to go to college because this is what I'm really passionate about, and I can make a difference in this area. Because like Duarte said, it's not about the money, but the impact. And that's what our generation is about now. The new generation is about that impact.
Yep.
How can we build upon that?
Indeed, it's got some very good points, and like Duarte said, I caution that again as well. And we all kind of, I think, are in agreement. Even the areas that are 36 and 38%, and let's say that we're off by 10% in Tulare County, and it's 29, it's still very low. I just can only. I haven't kept I recall that from my first year teaching Portuguese, I had 14 students in Portuguese. This is 27 years ago. So now, but I had 14 students in Portuguese 4. I only had 3 of them that went to college, 3 out of the 14. And even it's and then of course we have some issues sometimes, students dropping and everything else. I think indeed both of you mentioned the argument has to be different. The we cannot use the arguments of the last century. Linda, your thoughts on that and those numbers, even if they're 4 or 5 or 10% higher, what are your thoughts, and how can we
Well, I
move
would
that
agree.
pendulum?
I would agree with Duarte. I would like to see a disaggregated data because for a couple of reasons. One, just getting Portuguese as an option for ethnicity, really, there wasn't a big push until the most recent census. Prior to that, you had to pick. And when we get, as we've talked before, Denise, the further you get away from Portuguese roots, the more apt you are to not list Portuguese as your ethnicity. And so I'm curious about that, because in a county that maybe only had 100 people, let's say, report as being Portuguese, that number, the smaller it is, a few students not finishing high school make a huge difference in the percentage numbers that are reported. So that would be my first thing, is pushing more that pride and that ability to mark more than one ethnicity, which I think it was only the 2000 census that started to allow people to pick more than one. So if you're in a family that came from more than one ethnicity, you could only designate ones. You had to pick between your moms or your fathers. So that might be something that I would want disaggregated. I want to know whether or not people even know that that option is available to them as far as being a descent. I also think that college visibility is really important. Unlike Lucy, my father was very pro-education. However, I'm a little bit older, and in my generation, young women got married and they had their children. And then if they had time, they could go to school. But as school wasn't quite as, although education was a key to success, certainly for women, it wasn't quite as important as it was for males at the time. That obviously has changed drastically. And we've seen the shift in college numbers, that we have more females going to college than we do males now. But I do think that visibility, getting kids to a college campus. I ran the Peach Blossom Festival at Fresno State for 5 years, and that's a poetry festival where we bring little elementary school children onto the college campus and give them a positive experience reciting poetry and just being on campus. And I think that when young people can go to a college campus and walk around and meet some students and student athletes, they see this as, this is where I'm going. I'm going to go to college. And I think if we don't give our children those experiences of visiting college campuses and like Lucy was saying, just being aware of what's available for people, I think that that makes a huge difference in, it's got to be in the mind of the students as well. I also want to comment that a lot of Portuguese families, and maybe it's not as common now, but a lot of families had their own business. Portuguese families had their own business, their own ranches, their own dairies. And a lot of times they would end up going into the family business.
Sure.
And that was an option. It was a very viable option. It was an honorable option. And so some might not have considered getting a degree in addition to working. Maybe they felt like it was a one or the other. They had to pick or choose. I think that's I think it's minimized now. I think now, even if you own an ag business, you realize you need to take business classes. You need to take some things that will enrich your knowledge and your ability to run your business. But I think that that was also kind of a predetermined, you already knew what you were supposed to do as compared to what would you like to do. I do think the visibility of colleges, and I think also those of us who are in education, being visible to our students as role models. I am very open about my cultural connection, and I tell a lot of stories in class, and I tell a lot of Portuguese stories in class. And every single semester, after the first couple of days, my students that are Portuguese descent, and that doesn't mean that they're like one generation, two generation, they might be 6 generations out, they stay after class. because they just want to tell me that, oh my gosh, my grandmother or my great-grandmother is also Portuguese. And I ask them questions. Really? Are they from the Azores? Are they from the mainland? You know, and they go back and they actually seek out that information and come back. It's something that maybe they haven't pursued or connected with, but they want you to know that they have a connection with you. And I think it's important for us to be genuine and kind of present and talk about what our culture means to us so that they can see that pride in it.
Some very good points, and I believe that it's a thought, some food for thought in the aspect that maybe our festas, which are still the most participants of things that we have, should have more things on education. You know, should have, you know, these role models present and should talk about these things, because you know, if we just go where the Portuguese American community in California is going from festa to festa to festa, and that's great, but there are other things. I always, and Duarte has heard this argument before from me, which is everything is finite. I mean, we don't have an infinite source of time or an infinite resources or infinite anything. So we have to kind of, and if we're just doing festa and we're not doing everything else. So maybe the festa is such an important part of who we are as a community, whether we're from the Azores, Madeira, or mainland, but the festa is an important part, then that maybe we have to turn those festas into opportunities to talk about education and things like that. So I'll move it to Zeka, since we have the pleasure of having her now. You're muted, if you can unmute yourself. And Linda said something about the students getting students earlier on. Luz America Education Foundation, thanks to Joanne Malta Winegard, has done an excellent job with the youth camp, youth camps every summer, which, you know, haven't happened the last couple of summers because of the pandemic we've had, but hopefully they'll come back, and they will, I'm sure, next. But that is a wonderful program that usually takes, I mean, it started small, but it's now in the 50s and 60s, and students, they go every single year to a different university, and they stayed there for a couple of weeks, and they get immersed into that, and it can be all the way from junior high school students all the way to high school. But Zeka, introduce yourself a little bit to everyone knows who Zeka is. She is, we just call her Miss San Diego. And but Zeka is, so tell us a little bit about yourself. You don't have, your connection is also to islands, but it's a different group of islands.
Absolutely.
They're very beautiful as well. And then you have that wonderful thing that you know, of your generation, our generation, my generation, Duarte's generation. You went to UC Berkeley, which, you know, from San Diego, which a lot of parents wouldn't even allow their kids at that time to go to the junior college in San Diego.
True. I do apologize for the connection. Okay. And my desktop, which I tested this morning, was working fine, and then suddenly, so I was able to get in through the phone. But my name is Zeka Rodriguez, born Maria José Rodrigues. I was born in a very small village of Pul do Mar, Madeira, and I immigrated to the United States when I was 15 years old. It's a funny story. I was put back into, I was put into the 9th grade, and it was difficult because I didn't know any English, and you know, you always felt people making fun of you, but you go on with life. Graduated from Point Loma High School. In high school, I was very involved with going back to the junior high and helping those kids that were had just immigrated and were in the same situation I had just gone through. So I was very involved in doing that. I guess I had a good ear for languages, and I got accepted to the University of Berkeley, and loved it. And yes, it is weird that I got to UC Berkeley. The saving grace was that I really didn't know much about Berkeley itself. My counselor said, you know, you've got the grades to go to the UC system, and UC Berkeley, said yes, and I went there. I graduated as part, I was in languages, so I got accepted to the University of Perugia in Italy, for my third year, except I got very sick and could not go. So instead I went through the UC system, I went to France for a summer program, which was incredible. Anyway, after Berkeley, I moved out of, I came back to San Diego, and I actually went back to my high school, and the principal there was excited because she thought they would sponsor me to do the, to go and get my credentials and then teach at the high school. And so I got involved as an assistant teacher doing the ESL program and the bilingual program, and worked for that for 10 years until someone, an attorney in town, found out that I spoke multiple languages, and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse at the time, and became his in-house interpreter. And so I was interpreting 4 different languages and just loving it. Through that, I got very involved. This attorney and the attorneys I've worked for since were attorneys that represented gentlemen, the fishermen who got injured in the tuna boats. As you know, San Diego is was at that time the tuna capital of the world, and that was our life. So just doing that has been really great. But moving on, when I was out of the Point Loma area for quite some time, when I came back, I all of a sudden started getting very interested in our, how did Madeiras get to San Diego from, a little speck of dirt in the middle of the ocean? And find that there really wasn't anything. There's a couple of articles that somebody has, maybe from a newspaper or something, but there really is nothing that tells us how we got here. There's a little bit about how the Azorean people got here, but nothing about Madeira. Anyway, I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but so I got very into the community and trying to find out how we got here. I started doing interviews with the old timers and just learning all about that. So I'm very, very involved in trying to do something on that, and done quite a few presentations. Now, maybe to answer a little bit about the question you posed, San Diego is different, as I'm listening to the panelists, is obviously a different ambiance than it is in Northern California. When I went to high school, and there were a handful of, all of our soccer team practically were all Portuguese. The difference was that the boys, as soon as they graduated, literally the next day or within a week, they would be out on a tuna boat. Okay, some would be following their father's footsteps. Some, it was just because the money that these kids were making was just incredible. And so there really wasn't, especially at that time, there wasn't much thought given to education per se. Okay, the Azorean people were a little bit better about that than the Madeira people. And it's only because if we look at the immigrant from Madeira, they came from very, very humble means. And so those parents, those fathers became great fishermen and wanted to give their kids what they never had, except it took, maybe 2 decades to do that. And so by the time that kids weren't going fishing anymore, then those kids started going to school, and school became very important. So now if you look at the San Diego, I think if you look at the Portuguese in San Diego, now you have quite a diverse education. We have doctors, lawyers, one of the producers at ESPN is a kid from a Madeira guy here in in Point Loma. And so that generation all of a sudden became better. When I was in high school, I was the only Portuguese girl that went to college, you know, and at that time, there had been, 3 kids that were of Portuguese descent that decided to go to, had the opportunity to go to college. But I have a great picture at Point Loma High School. I'm in a picture with about 7 Portuguese kids, all of which went fishing. Most of them, all of them except one, became great captains in the industry. And the only one that, one had gone to college, and that he is now our honorary consulate. But, so it's just the different decades of our lives here and how the industry affected us. And now going to college in a Portuguese home is very much emphasized, and it's an honor to do so. It's almost like they're honoring the sacrifices that their parents and grandparents made. So I do, from the time I graduated high school to now, it is, it's a world of a difference, but it obviously can get better. So, and to my background, just wanted to tell you that I was one of the people through the Youth Portuguese Historical Center who worked to get Portuguese at Point Loma High School. And we have had the program now for 6 years. So, and that's something I'm very proud of, and hope to continue working with that.
And you were not one of them. You were the major. You and Lynette. So let's just set the record straight. It was Zeka and Lynette that worked tirelessly to get that under. But it is indeed an accomplishment that we should all commemorate, because there's only 11 high schools teaching in California, and that's our issue. And that's another issue that we'll tackle tomorrow morning. But 11 out of 4,400 high schools is nothing, and until we change that, then our language is going to have some issues. Obviously, in some towns it's great, like Point Loma. That area of San Diego is privileged. Tulare is the same with 3, and Turlock and Hillmar, but Los Banos the program has died, unfortunately, and Hanford many years ago, and so there's lots of work to be done. But indeed, that proves one point that we're going to discuss tomorrow, and I just like to mention that to those. It is that the Portuguese press put out there because of the visit of the president, which, by the way, the president did not meet with Portuguese educators, and that was a very big part that's I take to task, because I think the Portuguese educators, the Portuguese language teachers in California, are the true heroes. I'm not just saying that because I'm one of them. It's because they really are. Yeah. And so and the idea that the Portuguese press put out that our teacher called upon the Portuguese president to do something about the lack of Portuguese education in Artesia. I commented to my friends in Artesia, folks, ask Zeka and Lynette. It's not the Portuguese government; it's the community that has to do that. So as we move, and I don't want to take a lot more of your time. I know we're limited on time. A little bit about it's getting better. Zeka's kind of this, at this time when arriving in the United States at the age of 15 and then going to UC Berkeley is really powerful. And I think it's powerful that we tell Zeka's story to kids today. And, and Lucy has gone through the challenges she mentioned. It wasn't easy losing a father when you're that age, and she just kept on going. It didn't stop her. So we have a lot of these examples in the community. Duarte at Stanford, Linda, with her amazing work with her students, and she's an excellent communications teacher, because I've seen it firsthand with our CPAC youth leadership. And so how do we get the Zekas and the Lucys and the Lindas and the Duartes of the world to interact with our community more and to build upon these and others that we have, many of them following us here now, or part of the attendees that are part of the Luz American Education Foundation. How do we get this out to the community in general? We talked a little bit a while ago, maybe festas. Maybe we do think about this in a festa. There's got to be a way, and what are some of your thoughts that we get to entice more, because we're not at 100% yet, obviously, more Portuguese Americans of second, third, fourth, fifth generation to get into higher ed, and even to pursue, these advanced degrees, that are needed in order to occupy some of these positions that are positions of power, and that give us, a bit of an edge. I mean, it's not fair to compare the Portuguese community to the Hispanic community because of the numbers. We just don't have the numbers, obviously. But there's an arts center in Fresno that we have all heard, Art Americas, and they've had economic issues like all arts programs across California. And the Hispanic legislator that represents the area, Dr. Joaquin Arambula, just was able to get him $7 million grant. And so maybe we can't get $7 million, but maybe we can get, 500,000 or 750,000. But in order to do that, we have to be in position of power. And so my question to all of you is, what can we use within the community, what we have, because we cannot create anything else. As my good friend, Father Martin Lucy knows, would say, no mais Zoom, and we have enough organizations. So how do we use what we have to go into the community at all levels, whether it be in the Bay Area or all the way from Arcata to San Diego, and use the infrastructure that we have to take any ideas in that sense? Duarte, we'll start with you since you started last time.
Oh my God.
And you look reflective. I mean, you look at you and you're like this. You're thinking hard.
The entry into a community is always a difficult and challenging venture, and some of us, to be honest, in my case, in order to pursue our education, and in order to pursue our professional lives, we removed ourselves somewhat from the community. I have to say that I am not the one that always go to the festa or always go to the Portuguese, organizations, unless they involve education. I am usually there when it involves education and so forth. So it's I'm not sure that it's an easy task to, not only enter the community and, when you're there, to bring up these issues. Because I have to tell you, our organizations like comfort. They're comfortable and they enjoy being comfortable. And we know that when you're comfortable, you're usually not being challenged. And we need to be challenged. And perhaps that's why the organizations that exist right now have reached a plateau. I don't want to say they're paralyzed, like our Secretary of Education said our education system is, but they are. They basically stopped in time and they haven't evolved as this, the society, and the 21st century brought us a lot of, challenging, but also a lot of opportunities. And, the pandemic was a good time for us to, look back and reflect. And hopefully, and this is the conversation in higher education about education, we do not want to go back to the normal, because the normal was not working for a lot of students, was not working for a lot of members of our society. The same thing is, we brought back the festa. It's the same festa. Let's be comfortable with that. Let's be happy with that. No, let's reflect and look, what is our next chapter in this organization? How can we involve the newer members of our community in the organization? How can we bring the educational component to this festa? Because I have to tell you, I've done this before, and not empirical data, but I have anecdotal data. Most of the young people, most of the middle-aged people that are participating in this festas, they do not know the significance behind the festa. They do not know the cultural ritual in which they are participating in. They're blindly participating in it. They're not understanding the components of the Coroa do Espírito Santo, the bandeira do Espírito Santo, the symbolism behind each one of those things. We failed as organizations, as festa organizations, or whatever the organization is, to really transmit the true meaning and the significance of, the rituals we engage in blindly. I mean, we, participate, but, like in education, we want to bring significance. We want to bring relevance, and you're not going to bring relevance and significance to a cultural ritual, or a religious ritual for that matter, if they don't understand the why. Okay, they participate. They do not understand the why. This is happening on this particular day, at this particular festa, and why some things happen on a Friday, and some things happen on a Saturday, and something happens on a Sunday, and even why we serve sopas, okay, and so forth. So we failed miserably to transmit the message behind the ritual or behind the superficial aspect of the festas. So bringing an educational component to our festas, to our organizations, would be a great step forward, to engaging people and have, so they can, because in education, and I think Lucy can tell me all about our students, they want problem-solving curricula. They want action-oriented curricula. They want experiential learning, right? They don't want to just be there. That's what they're telling us. Every time I talk to students, they want to engage. It's so interesting because I was listening to a discussion about tourism in the Azores, and everyone was saying, well, the tourism don't want to be tourists anymore. They want experiences. They want to participate in the experiences. They want to learn how to make whatever that they are seeing and so forth. So the same thing with education. And I think our students are not, our students, our younger community members are not connecting to the organizations just because, we're not providing them with the rich experiences that they would like to have. And certainly not the understandings that they need to have to make meaning of those rituals for themselves.
Thank you, Duarte. Lucy, add a little bit to that. How do we, the same question, so I'm not going to repeat it. Your thoughts.
So I was actually thinking you were talking about festas, but you were also talking about the Luz America Education Foundation and the experience that they provide in the summer.
Yeah.
So
A festa can be
a
conference, yeah.
Right, so Luz America has the fraternal piece, right? And my kids are involved in, well, I was involved because my dad sold insurance for Luz America when he was transitioning from milking cows. He sold insurance for Luz America, and I was part of the youth group way back then, and something that I continued with my kids. We have policies and my kids are part of the youth group now. You have a captive audience when they have the youth performances, right? The youth day, you have a captive audience. And you have kids from all over California. So I'm thinking, why not add an educational component to that? You have, they have a youth banquet that night. And I know in the past they've had speakers, but our kids want more. They want dynamic, right? The dynamic piece. And I think if you couple that with a social media aspect, you have that captive audience, you have their parents. Like this year, it was in Santa Clara. There was a ton of people in that convention center at Santa Clara. It was full. Why not? And they did a great job with social media and talking about different things. Why not talk about college and the opportunities and highlight some of those successful people? Right now I have my daughter, like I told you about my daughter before, it's all about those influencers, TikTok, all of those things. Build upon that, use that. They love all that stuff. She's always showing me about this influencer. That's how everything she knows right now. She's learning from TikTok. I think nothing from her mom or her dad. It's all TikTok. Best shampoo, best toothpaste, all this stuff. Why not about best college? Our careers that we need to push kids towards, right? Where's society going? What do we need? And I think sometimes, I'm going to be blunt, our Portuguese community sometimes are cliquish. And they don't allow for that to take place in a not so very political way to say it. But I think we need to open that up and invite others to come in and highlight the success that we have. I think of even some of the younger Portuguese people in our Tulare community that are amazing. They have amazing positions, not my generation, younger than me. kids that are 25, 26, in their 30s that are doing amazing things. Let's highlight those kids because they are much more connected to our youth than I am. And that gap, is less there, and they can see, wow, look at what they're doing. And the traveling too, some of the careers that they have that allow them to travel and explore and do all these wonderful things. So this is my soapbox that can go on for a long time.
No, please do. And it's interesting. I think we do have to highlight it. I don't think we do a good job there. And I think that's even, as you said, social media, why not create through a couple of the organizations, it has to be monitored, maybe Luz America, PFSA, some of the other organizations. Why not create a social media atmosphere where you every week or you highlight one or two Portuguese Americans that, of different generations. It can be someone who was 60, it can be someone who's 25, not just always the 60 crowd, or just different people. And a very good point in bringing up the younger generation that is now having these different opportunities. Linda, your thoughts on that? And but that's some two good points there. Of course, the festa can be used in a different manner, and the festa is not just a festa, of the Espírito Santo or Santo Antonio. It's also a festa that is a conference, like the Luso American Fraternal Society or the financial end of it. Linda, your thoughts on that? And Linda has a double responsibility because she's hitting what, of course, she is something that we started at Fresno State that we like to build on, which is the Portuguese American Educators Leadership Network. And so I've asked Linda, invited her, begged to have her and Ashley Fagundes lead it, because I don't have time for everything. I can be their support, but I think that that's something that we can also build upon.
So two things. One, I wanted to talk, like Duarte was talking about the festas and the meanings and how we don't really know them. When my husband was, he was a sergeant in Pismo Beach, they'd have the big Pismo Festa and nobody knew what it meant. And so my husband had me write up just some brief things so that people would recognize the symbolism of the capes and the different images on the capes to signify what they represent and why we do what we do. And every year he would send it out to all the city employees in Pismo Beach so they would be aware of the significance of the festa. But there were a lot of people that would go to the festa and they wouldn't necessarily go to the festa, they would go to the dunes, and they didn't know, these were the Portuguese people who were going for the festa, but they weren't really, they didn't get it. They weren't connected to the actual festa. So there is a problem with the education of knowing what we do and why we do it. That would be a really good thing to kind of take on. And I think that those organizations, those fraternal organizations, those Portuguese organizations that do the festas, I think that we should be asking them to do, I know they do a lot already, and I'm super happy that we still have them, but why isn't that a scholarship opportunity for the Queens? Why aren't, when you think about the opportunities to get scholarships, there's a lot of ag scholarships. We know that tends to be one of the major sources of scholarships for the Portuguese youth in our area. But there aren't a lot for women who aren't in ag, young ladies that aren't in ag. My daughter was a dancer. She did the Miss America, Miss California thing. She did that route in order to get some scholarships, but she was also queen of two festas. And it would have been nice if there would have been a college scholarship attached to that. Nothing huge, but just a little something, an incentive to get them to go to college. It would also be nice, and I know Lucy's daughter is going to be queen this weekend. Is it this weekend? I think it's this weekend in Tulare, but it would be nice that they not just list the high school, but they list maybe the career aspirations for these young women, because these young ladies become role models to the younger girls in the crowd at the festa. And it would be really wonderful if they even set up something where they brought past queens back to talk about where they went to college and what the festa ended up meaning to them. Because I think if we set up these role models, that has, like Lucy says, it's a lot more powerful when you hear it from somebody younger rather than from your mom or your grandmother. So I think that would be really important to do. I think a lot more role models. I think getting all of our educators to mention that they're Portuguese when they're in class teaching, whether you're teaching kindergarten, 3rd grade, 5th grade, junior high, college, it doesn't matter. Mention who you are and that you're we're proud of being Portuguese, and that Portuguese people go to college too, and we can get degrees, and we can bring our culture into the classroom as we're giving examples. I think that, it's nice to get big organizations to do it, but we can also start very small. What can we individually do? And I think it's important to think about that. But it would be nice if we could get the festas to be on board with maybe talking about bridging that gap to going to college as well.
It's a very good point. Every queen should get a college, should get a college scholarship. That's a very good point. That's actually also a great idea, along with the others that were given. Zeka, I know that, of course, San Diego is different, but you still, of course, not everybody's still going to college. There's probably a few of them that aren't. What are your thoughts? How can we partner and maybe have San Diego show some of the other communities that are struggling, some pointers, give us some pointers.
Okay, going back to Duarte's point on the festas and people just going, not really knowing what they were experiencing. About 5 years ago, that was so troublesome to me that I actually prepared a pamphlet, through the Portuguese Historical Center and detailing what the festa is and everything else. So I think we're kind of in the right track there, trying to educate people, and people are always fascinated with it. Number two, what I'd like to say, and I don't know if it is so in other communities, but here in San Diego, most of our organizations, if not all, have a college scholarship set up for either members or children of members and so forth. So I always think, and I know the PHC has, right now we have about 4 of them. And organization Santa Maru has a couple of them, and Alianza. So, and I do believe that those are very, very important. And it's amazing to read these kids' bios and their interests, and they're all going to 4-year college is one of the requirements. So we have some great minds in our community that need to be fueled. On that, I'm one that learns through experience. I like to experience what I'm learning, and it sticks. I have to work very hard, but one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, is I did a program in France, in Paris, France, through UC Berkeley, and it was just a work study program. And I learned more in those couple of months than I did in all of my years in school learning French. And so I truly believe that, and on that, just this past July, my family and we all went to Portugal. There were 14 of us. And the younger kids were so excited about experiencing Portugal. And it just gave them a different taste. And you could see how proud they were. And they wanted to learn. Now they want to learn Portuguese. Now they want to go back every year and all of that. And so, I have always been a proponent of, it wouldn't take much to take one of the scholarships from these organizations and actually select, a Portuguese student and sponsor them to go experience a summer in Portugal. And as a matter of fact, Denise, I think Professor Vasconcelos at San Diego State. And he just went to Madeira to meet with some people over there. And I just talked to him, and he actually said that the government of Madeira is very open to actually accepting students and they would provide housing and food and whatever, if we could give them the ticket there. And so I'm right now going to go to the various organizations and see if we can make that happen. I'm pretty sure we can. Sure. But I really think that one of the ways that we can get kids interested is is providing them a trip to Portugal to go study or work, or, to experience Portugal firsthand, come back with that desire to learn more, go on to college, and, whether they pursue a Portuguese, related topic or another, is just a way of enriching their education. So, all of the points that everyone has made, I think are great points. Mine is just, another one that I think could be a way that we could excite, bring the excitement of the young kids to really experience Portuguese, and make it enrich their lives.
Indeed, I mean, exchange programs are a must, and we have some things at Fresno State that are working, and I just think that that's one of the reasons why we do need to have more Portuguese in higher education, working in higher education also, and not because they're just working there, they're a professor there,
Right.
or they're whatever. It's because it can create this atmosphere, the atmosphere that we were able to create. Duarte knows that because he's been a mentor in a lot of our programs. The atmosphere we're able to create at Fresno State is because of PBBI and everything else that we're doing. Many people that have told me that they, while I was in Fresno State 25 years ago, we didn't have any of this stuff.
Right.
But obviously, it does also need community support, and sometimes we even need to talk about that. One of the things that we need to move forward, and I'd like to hear from all of you, is with endowments. And I'm not just saying because I really would like one at Fresno State, but also because we need an endowment at San Diego State, and we need an endowment at Stanislaus State, and throughout the areas we need to pick. We can't have an endowment in 23 campuses. We know that, and 11 or 12 UCs. But if we pick regionally some schools that have a tradition with Portuguese, and we create 5 or 6 endowments in 5 or 6 colleges throughout California, it will be huge, because just next semester, and you're taught that. And so the idea is to take the language beyond the classroom, as Duarte mentioned, and Lucy mentioned, and Linda as well, and you too, Zeka, which is, we are having 2 programs, just real quick. One of them is students, anywhere between 10 to 12 students and 2 professors, are going to be spending 2 weeks in Pico Island on the vineyards. They're all students of our ag program. And the other one is 10 students from the Master of Fine Arts program that are going to spend 2 weeks in Terceira at the school Tomás de Borba, a high school, and the junior high school, that are students of English. And these 10 MFA students, Master of Fine Arts students, are going to be teaching them creative writing, so they can learn how to create with the language that they are learning, other than just the mechanics that sometimes are taught. And just yesterday, I heard from the vendor that's trying to work this with us, and he said, "I'm just up to the top of my head with requests for the Azores and for Portugal, but especially for the Azores," which he said I didn't even know what it was until about 2 years ago, until I started contacting with Fresno State. And so I think that it's important to show these young folks that we need Portuguese Americans in higher education positions that then can foster this and can build that movement. Because if we don't have anybody there, if we don't have anybody in higher ed or at the superintendent level like Lucy, or if we don't have anybody that builds bridges between the community and education, such as Zeka did, and Duarte, of course, with Stanford and everything he's done through languages, if we don't have Portuguese Americans in public office, then we don't have the resources to go reach that. So I'm going to make one final round, and just final thoughts from each one of you. There's lots that we could discuss, but we only have about 10 minutes. It goes fast. I have some points here. I mean, some excellent, from a very practical one that we could actually do already next month or next year, which is what Lucy mentioned at the Luso American Fraternal Federation convention, or the Luso Financial, to, the social media outlets, to enticing organizations to give, even if they can only give $500 scholarship. I think most of them can even do better. They could give a They could even give a $500 scholarship to the queen and 250 to the side attendants, so they invest $1,000. It's not like a big deal. I mean, sometimes we spend more of that on thermos that we throw out because people don't buy it. And so, our food. So that was actually just my speech, and I think Lucy heard it, to the president of Portugal, which was, hey, we have money. We just sometimes need our own community needs to reflect itself, because if we can pay $85,000 for a bullfight, we can do something for the community when it comes to education. So we're not asking, my point, as Lucy knows, was we're not asking for a handout from Portugal. We have resources in our community. So Duarte, final thoughts from you. I've taken about, 6 or 7 things here of notes, but any final thoughts, how we move forward, and what can, because the outcomes would be major for our community if we moved in this direction.
Just a couple of ideas. I love Lucy's idea of creating young people's influencers, because those go a long way in social media. And I think we could put that together again in collaboration with Luso and identifying those, college students, the young entrepreneurs that are everywhere throughout California. And Lucy said it, very successful 20-somethings and 30-somethings that are really, really could play this role very, very well. And I think our youth would listen to them. The other thing, bringing in the community, we didn't discuss this, but this is a marvelous opportunity. And that is internships for the community, the different business to offer internships, both to high school students and college students, because students are dying. Nobody gets into grad school if they don't have an internship or two on their resume. I review a lot of the applications, and they do not have an internship. They do not get into a graduate degree. So I think the community could be brought in, and having young people shadow some of our successful business and professionals. We could have, in almost every context, we could have those student interns. I love the idea of an endowment. And we can, the Portuguese community is a very rich community. We know that, funding and so forth. There are, if you go to Stanislaus State, you're going to see the Mary Stuart Rogers, buildings and so forth. Mary Stuart Rogers come from the islands of São Jorge, Feijão dos Vinhos, that we mentioned here today. Well, they have never been channeled into doing something for the Portuguese community there. I think that would be a really easy sell. If we really, really establish these endowments, I think we could go to our senior community that are about to doing their trusts and their wills and so forth. And I think they would be able to dedicate some of their, assets to establishing an endowment. On our end, from higher ed, I think we need to go to the development office and say, development office, we need help in establishing a Portuguese endowment. Let's give it a more creative name, but something like that. And they would, they have the expertise. I work side by side a lot with the development office at Stanford, because they always like to take a poster child with them when they go approach the funders and so forth. And the other piece of it's, we only hear about the individuals that give $1 billion, or just like, we did last week, for the School of Sustainability at Stanford. But, $5,000, $10,000, $1,000 is the beginning of an endowment. So I think we need to pursue all these avenues and go forward.
So thank you, Duarte. Lucy, I know that you have a very tight schedule, and especially because you're the Queen's mother. Can you believe that? I can't believe that Lucy's the Queen's mother. But anyway, time flies. I know you have a busy schedule, and feel free to leave anytime you need to. But any final thoughts besides all the great information and suggestions that you made?
No, I was just going to say, and I think not only do we have a wealthy community, but we also have, I would say, a very generous community. The Portuguese community, I think, is very generous, and I know that myself and my family, we've benefited from that generosity when my dad passed away, and I know that we have a community that really does come together. So I think it's just, how do we get the community to come together, and how do we build upon those opportunities, and again, I think involve those individuals that are in their mid-20s to early 30s, that those kids, that the younger generation can really connect to, that are doing some amazing things out there that we kind of just need to highlight and move forward with.
Fantastic. Linda, talk about the generosity that Lucy mentioned. You can maybe use some of your dad's talents. He was able to collect a lot of money for a lot of different causes. How does Linda tap on the Carvalho talent and raise some money for an endowment? I'm just kidding, but I mean some ideas.
I don't think I have his skill in that. The man was a salesman. I am not. However, I do like the idea of calling it a Luso-American endowment, because then you would have an automatic organization already set, and maybe Luso-American Foundation could be something that sponsored maybe 3 universities in California, maybe one northern, one central, one southern, to get started, and you'd already have a partner kind of in place. That might be a way to start, and maybe they could help with the fundraising effort to get that going, and it would carry their name, which would continue the traditions that they already have. I would also love to do study abroad. So if we have higher education teachers who are willing to go and teach, I'll teach comm classes or common learning education classes, and go I'd gladly take a group of students to Portugal. If I could teach the classes, I would gladly do it. And I'm sure that we have educators that are already Portuguese and already in higher education. There's no reason why we couldn't come up with some of these 2-month study abroad kind of systems. I'm sure we've got teachers. I know we do. I just went to my class reunion too from high school, and one of the professors from San Diego University, she's Portuguese descent as well, and she teaches or has taught, she just retired, history. So she's emeritus now as well. So you've got history, and you've got English, and you've got communication, and you've got education, and I'm sure that there's a way to put together some units that would give them that, like Zeka was saying, that on the ground experience of getting to see the culture, living culture, and also earning their degree while they're there. Why not?
Faculty-led positions, faculty-led opportunities at Fresno State have just opened up. So Linda, you're more than welcome to as a faculty of Fresno. No, we just signed. When I say we, it wasn't me, but the president is just signing this next week. An agreement between Fresno State. It took a year and a half, but it's just an agreement between Fresno State and FLAD of the SIPN program, which is the Study in Portugal Network. The agreement is being signed. It's already been signed by FLAD, and our president is going to sign it, Dr. Saul Jimenez Sandoval, and it will open up a lot of doors. And the idea with the international studies and continuing in global ed is to try to have 4 or 5 different faculty-led programs, if we could lead up to that every semester from different fields. Our college, our dean of College of Mathematics, I believe it is, mathematics and something else. Chris Meyer is Portuguese. The other day, he just emailed me, and from his mother's side, he is Portuguese, and he's very, very interested in doing STEM work with Portuguese universities. Wow. So there's lots of different opportunities. We just have to seize on them and get the community behind us, as all of you said. Zeka, you have the last word.
Well, I think everyone has made excellent points. I do like the idea of the Luso-American endowment, and perhaps that is a way of sort of reintroducing the various communities. That it would be, we're connected through the festas, I think, but it would be incredible to get this connection through education. So if we can maybe as a body of this Luso-American Endowment Foundation, we can maybe have a couple of fundraisers or introduction to the endowment.
Sure.
Up in the Bay Area, or even up north in Northern California, Central California, and Southern California. And then that way, it becomes integrated. And certainly, I like it. I like the idea of having, and then perhaps in one of those conferences, we can do these introductions. Each community would be able to do their introductions of, the 30-something professionals, they're 20-something professionals, and the high school or the high school and under, and let them be the leaders, so to speak. Let them tell us their story, and maybe that will be a way of getting the younger generation excited, and at the same time, people opening their wallets.
Indeed. Well, thanks to all of you. We're really out of time, and I thank all of you, Duarte, Lucy, Linda, and Zeka. Thanks for your insights. Thanks for your generosity of your time today, an hour and a half, and thanks also for your leadership roles in all different aspects that you're involved in. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful festa, Lucy. It's our annual Festa de Nossa Senhora de Fatima here in the city of Tulare. And I think that we need to, of course, this is just one, and there's been some comments, but this is just one of many panels. We do have a panel with young people today at 4 p.m. It's called Navigating the Future, Perspectives from the Z Generation, which I had to learn all these terms. The Z Generation is, like 16, 17s, all the way up to 27, I believe. And so we have 4 young people. One's having some issues committing to the time, but we'll try to see. But we have 3, possibly 4, and have that conversation with them. We're going to have the conversations with the next generation after that, with the Gen X. We're going to have with the Boomers. We're going to have with all the different, and we have quite a few things with young people. And our teachers of Portuguese panel is going to be, they're mostly young. I mean, Michelle Machado, unfortunately, Bruna cannot make it, but she'll be represented by Clement Fagundes from this area. And so it's all, I've invited Zeka Zé Duarte was a young man also in his 30s. And so it's all, we're trying to get as much as we can, obviously, with people from different organizations and different backgrounds and different generations involved. It's 5 days. We just began today, and we have a lot to go. There's a couple of people with their hands up, but maybe we can answer and talk about their questions in the next panel. Again, thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Duarte. Thank you, Linda. And thank you, Zeka. Appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you, Denise,
And thank you,
for all
Denise,
your
for your
time and
leadership.
effort.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
Indeed.
Bye.
And so, thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you all. So we're going to continue with the Luso-American Education Foundation conference. I'm not going to end the session. I'm just going to transition to another session because we only have 2 minutes to transition. And so I am going to transition to, as I said, to another session. And it is the next session, which is called Luso-American Education or Luso-American Education Foundation. It's actually about the foundation. And it is navigating projects in a post-pandemic world. It was to start at 2:30. So we're just about 2 minutes from that. And so I'm going to bring in the folks that already are on here. And so for those of you who are joining us now, whether you're joining us on social media or whether you're joining us here on the Zoom webinar, welcome. This is the 46th annual conference on education and culture of the Luso-American Education Foundation. And we are going to transition to this next panel. Welcome to all of you. As always, you can go ahead and write your comments in. We'll get to some we may not be able to get, but we just I can assure you that throughout the next few days, we have panelists from all age groups. We have panelists from all over California, from the Bay Area and north of the Bay Area, actually, to San Diego. We have panelists that have different experiences. And our theme that, of course, navigating the future is about talking about the past, but also bringing in the future. We talked about the past in our first panel, and now we need to transition into the future aspect, including this one that is going to be about the Luso-American Education Foundation. How do we navigate some of the flagship, I should say, I think that's the right word, flagship programs of the Luso-American Education Foundation. How do we navigate these into the 21st century? And that is why I'm bringing in already on is Eduardo Eusebio, who has been who was on the founding end of this conference 46 years ago. Like I said, Duarte was only 5 when the conference began 46 years ago, and I know Joanne was also at the very first conference. I think she was 5.5, and Eduardo Eusebio was the leader of it at the age of 12. So I mean, these are people who've been around for a while, but they were very young when they started. So we have Bernice also joining us, Bernice Pelikas, and I'm trying to bring in Manuel Betancourt. Manuel, I don't know if your camera's turned on because it's not allowing me. It just did. You just have become part of the panel. So there's also Dr. Manuel Betancourt from the San Jose area, San Jose, Santa Clara, Milpitas, all that area. So welcome to all of you. Welcome, Joanne. Welcome, Eduardo. Welcome, Bernice, and welcome, Manuel. As we continue, I thought that I might have a chance of 10 minutes break, to go to the restroom and do all those things that one must do. But hey, we'll go to the restroom in about 2 hours. So we're going to continue with this panel. And then after this one will take us to close to 4 o'clock. And then our last panel for today is actually with people who are around 20 years old. So 17 to 26. And I thank Bernice for helping me arrange that panel as well. That's Navigating the Future Perspectives from Generation Z at 4 p.m. Now, this one, as I said, Luso American Education Foundation, navigating projects in a post-pandemic world. Manuel, you're on. We can see a Praça de Touros that's inside a volcano, but we don't see you, so we need to see you as well. I'm going to start basically asking. And I know that everybody knows who you are, but there are people in the social media world that are following us. We have people that have been making comments from the East Coast, from the Azores, from Madeira, from Portugal, mainland Portugal. So this is being recorded, obviously, for the Portuguese Oral History Project of Fresno State and for our PBBI Fresno State PBBI YouTube channel. And it's also being broadcast at the Luso American Education Foundation Facebook page. And thanks to the 32 groups that have agreed and are carrying us live as well. So we're reaching lots and lots of people, and that's always great to bring these conferences in to the 21st century, as we have tried to do. I'm going to ask each and every one of you to take about 5 minutes. I'm not going to be an authoritarian and hit and put you on silent, but I am going to ask you that you, if you can, to please respect the 5 to 6 minutes, more or less, and just give you a brief introduction about yourself and how you've been involved with Luso America. I know that all of you are involved with multiple organizations. Manuel Betancourt has a list of about 185 that he's been involved in, but I just would like you to basically give you a little bit of an intro about yourself and your involvement with the foundation. We'll start with Joanne, Malta, Winegard, right there with that beautiful background.
Yeah, I had out my summer camp, but I think I had it reversed and I couldn't change it. So that's it. And I can't get back to the normal one. Hi, I'm Joanne Malta Winegard, and I've been with the organization for about 45 years. I was basically born into the Luso American Education Foundation and Federation family. And I've been a teacher and I've taught Portuguese, and I've been very involved with the community for basically all of my life. And it basically is part of my soul. Even though I'm Portuguese American and my husband is not Portuguese, what happens to many of us when you marry someone that's not Portuguese, you kind of make their soul Portuguese and they become part of the family and part of our Luso family. So I work with the foundation as a volunteer. I'm on the board and I help run the summer camp and I help with scholarships. And that's about it, really. I mean,
wow, fantastic. And you did that in 4 minutes. I'm so proud of you, Joanne. Oh my gosh, that was awesome. Don't you all think that you're going to get that minute from her, okay? So that means it's going to go back to her later on. Eduardo, we'll just go across here as I see folks. So Eduardo, same thing, please.
Thank you, Denise. Before I say anything else, Denise, I have to talk about you. And thank you, PBBI, Fresno State, and FLAD, because without you, this thing would not happen. You're the right guy at the right moment for us.
Okay, move forward now, please.
Moving forward. I have been with this organization practically since I set foot in the United States in 1963, and was the year that the foundation was founded. However, I did not really participate in things until 1968. And as you mentioned many times, I was at the very first conference in 1977 in San Diego. I was responsible for the conference for many years, and I've worked with every one of you on this panel, including yourself, in putting the conference together.
How many conferences did you put together? Eduardo, you remember? How many conferences did you put together?
Well, I put 19 of them together in a
19,
row by myself. Well,
Right, by yourself.
wait a minute. I was the chairman with a large group, I should say.
With lots of co-chairs, that's right. But you were the chairman of 19.
I was the toddler with him.
That was the problem. And then after that, I had many others as a co-chair with Manel Betancourt and others yourself. So altogether, I don't know, 20 some, 30,
Sure.
who knows?
Who knows? Indeed.
Right.
Thank you. Manuel Betancourt, same thing. 5 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, good. I'm Manuel Betancourt. I'm a retired dentist. I was born in the island of Graciosa. I'm the oldest of 13 children. 13, yeah. There was no TV in Graciosa 7 years ago. And I have been with the Luz American Education Foundation for about 30 years, also helping with the conference. And was president a couple times, and I'm still there. But now I'm retired. I'm doing something else on the side also. That's all.
That's okay. Wow, fantastic. Hey, vocês estão muito curtos. Okay, next we'll go to Bernice. Bernice, same.
Hi, Denise and everybody. Thank you for inviting me to be on the panel. And I've been listening to most of the day, the different panels, and it's just really terrific. Thank you, Denise, for doing this for the third year, I guess. Is it third year?
Yeah, third year, but move on. That's like I told you about. This is not about me, so move on.
Well, it is. But anyway, I've been with Luz American Education Foundation for about 28 years, I would guess. And I started off as in the advisory board, then as a director, and then as vice. I don't think I was ever vice president. I went to president to being the administrative director of the foundation 2.5 years ago. So I've had a lot of time. I love the organization. And I'm just happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. Thank you. And so we'll start the same order as we did now. And basically, for those of you following us, these four folks, these four people with me here have been responsible for various aspects of the foundation. They've all done different things. As Manuel Betancourt has mentioned, he's done many co-chairs of the conferences. He's been involved in many different, everybody's worn different hats, let's put it that way. But I'm going to start with Joanne, go back to Joanne since she began. And what I asked Joanne and everyone on here, what I asked Joanne was to talk about the summer camp. And yesterday, and just in the prior panel, we talked about the summer camp, and how it has been doing such a wonderful job. And of course, we've been living in a pandemic, but I'm sure that 2023, it will be in full force again. So Joanne, tell us a little bit, and I'm going to ask everybody the same thing that I kind of sent in an email, if you remember, which is give us a little bit of a historical, but not much. I mean, we want to talk about the future. But tell us, how it started and what's happened, and your thoughts really are very important. And I think we're going to come back to Joanne a second time for her to talk about the scholarships in the future, but not right now, basically the summer camp. How did it start? How is it? And how do you see this after basically 2021 and 22, after a 3-year pandemic? So a little bit of historical context and then the future.
Okay, I will do that. I've been helping to organize and administer the camp for not quite 26 years, for about 22 years. Our camp started in 1996. That was 26 years ago. We have had 22 camps. We had a 1 year that we reorganized, and then the last 3 years with the epidemic, we have not had camps. We have basically the camp was founded or organized by members of the foundation, and one was Billy Gonzalez. He's the one that organized the first one and kind of ran it, but there were many of us that were involved in getting this going. I know that today, in listening to some of the panels, I'm not sure that everyone that's with the Luso American Federation realized that the Education Foundation has summer camps running, because I know some of the people that were talking today were not really sure that we had programs going abroad and stuff, and I'll talk about that a little later. But that comes up with our summer camp also. Our summer camp is run by mostly volunteers, and we have a few paid staff members. We've had from 20 campers to 65 campers in the last 22 years. Our camp is a camp that basically is designed to prepare youth ages 12 to 17 for college, while simultaneously teaching them about our Portuguese culture and language. It's a 5-day camp, and it's held through many colleges in California. We rotate the campuses because when we started the program, some of our students were not going on to 4-year colleges. So we started having the camp where we could rotate it every year and go to a different university or college, meaning we go to Cal State universities, we go to UC campuses, and we also do private universities and colleges. And then that gives a camper, who usually campers come back and attend for like 3 to 5 years, our camps, it gives them an opportunity to visit different campuses, to look at the physical layout of campuses, and also to see what the majors and minors are on campuses. At camp, we usually go on field trips on campus, and we go on field trips where we rent a bus and have the students see the basic the regional areas of where that campus is. And we try to have all of our workshops conducted by people from the regional areas, because they come as volunteers to do our camps, our workshops at camps. And so we get basically 5 days of action-packed activities for kids. In the end, and we were talking about that earlier, like how do you get this new generation to be more Portuguese or to really be more involved? And we really feel that most of our campers that come for more than a year or two really leave with a Portuguese soul. Most of them are not first or second generation Portuguese Americans. Some of them are third, fourth, even fifth generation. Grandparents send them to camp. We have different organizations that sponsor kids for camp, from Holy Ghost associations to the Lusitania organizations, where Macau organizations send kids also from their organizations to our camp, because our camp is all inclusive. It is not just for members of the Fraternal Federation. It's open to anyone that's Portuguese American, or even friends of Portuguese American kids that come to camp. They basically do not have to speak Portuguese. We do some Portuguese, but since most campers do not speak Portuguese, we really focus more on the cultural aspects of camp. We have an ambassador over the years that has come from the Azores. The regional government of the Azores has sponsored a counselor where they pay for the flight, and then we give them housing and everything at camp, where they also talk about their islands or cultural aspects that are more regional to the Azores. We've had speakers come and talk to us about other Portuguese diaspora areas throughout the world, because it's important that we realize that Portugal is a small country, but yet Portuguese is spoken in many parts of the world. And it's important that our Portuguese American kids know that it's just not their village that their grandparents are from, and that's the only thing that's really Portuguese. So we focus on different parts of the world that speak Portuguese. We focused on Macau, we focused on Angola one year, we focused on Brazil many times, we focused on Hawaii, the Azores, Madeira, mainland Portugal. And that's really important, because if you're a Portuguese American camper coming to camp and your parents are from Madeira and you know that village really well, you want to come to camp and learn about other places where Portuguese American kids' families are from too, and see what the differences and similarities are between the different places. So we do have a lot of that too. Let me see here. I have a few more notes. I won't overdo it. When we do our field trips at camps, like if it's at UC Santa Cruz, we go to the boardwalk, we go to a state park. We usually go visit the Portuguese halls in the area, just like we did when we went to San Jose State University. We visit the Portuguese organizations. They do ice cream socials for us. They come and speak. Our speakers are from people that are self-employed, people that work at Google and at bigger companies that come and talk to our kids, because it's important that they really get to know who their mentors are, and that there's a lot of Portuguese American mentors that are adults that are in careers that are important, and they may be careers that they want to go into. So let me see. There's so much to say. I talk too much, so I just wanted to be sure I get it all. So the cultural aspects. So one point that I want to say, they don't have a "Hey Jesus" moment where they're, they find out they're more Portuguese, but they do have a moment where their soul becomes more Portuguese. And I think we've done a very good job with that. And we've done a very good job in that our camp is not that expensive. It's $500 for 5 days of camp. And we have many organizations that sponsor kids for camp, and they can get scholarships. And if a kid wants to come to camp bad enough, he can come to camp. So we've had up to 70 campers a year come to our camp. And so over the 22 years, we have influenced quite a few kids that are Portuguese American background. So there may be more about camp that I can say. I know many people that are sitting here know more about the camp too, because they worked with me on camp. So I'm not sure if I missed anything, but I think that kind of captures what it is. Now during the pandemic, we have not had camp for 3 years. It's very difficult to start again from scratch, because we need to get more staff on board again and find a location. And also we have no problem finding the campers. Kids want to come to camp. But we need to find someone to help run the camp this year. A lot of us are the baby boomer era, and we need to get that younger generation in to help us with camp. They're better with media and setting things up. And we hope to have a camp this year. We have a planning committee. We're working on it. And we should know in the next month if we will be having a camp next summer. Again, we're not sure where it's going to be. It needs to be somewhere exciting so that we can get parents to drive their kids to the camp. Once they're there, we take care of them. So that's kind of a little bit about our camp. It is advertised on our website. We put up lots of information, lots of pictures of camp, and it really is a life-changing experience for many of our campers. They come from families where their parents may not do a lot of Portuguese stuff at home. They only do Portuguese stuff when they're with their grandparents. But when they come to camp and they realize how rich the culture is and all the activities, not just folk dancing and playing Portuguese games or playing sueca or bishka, which we do at camp too, they realize that bonding with other Portuguese American campers, students, is really important, and they continue those bonds for years. We've had kids even marry each other. So it's an important aspect of continuing to do what we did when we were kids. Some of us grew up with the Federation, the Loose American Education, the Loose American Federation, Fraternal Federation, and we went to the conventions and we danced and we had opportunities to do lots of stuff. Those opportunities still do exist. They may not exist as much in the Festa area, because when you go to Holy Ghost Festas, because that's an older generation that's still running a lot of them. But I think with time we can get this younger generation to take on those roles. I'm really proud of the new generation of Portuguese American kids. I think they've done a lot. They are going on to college. We have 99% of kids that have gone to college from our camp. We had one kid that didn't do it right at the beginning, but 10 years later, he finished too. So every kid that's come to our camp has gone to a 4-year college and finished, except for 3 kids that have gone on to community colleges, and then they did certificate programs because they had family businesses that they were running. So I just wanted to leave it at that. So I probably missed a lot, but that's kind of.
No, you didn't miss a lot, but I want you to cover one thing, if you don't mind, which is, okay, so 3 years of a pandemic. You have a committee right now to look at what's the possibility, building it, because it's not something that can be organized in a month or two. It takes quite a few months. Do you see, because when you say the Portuguese soul, you've been the soul of the camp yourself. So do you see that young people are interested in doing the work that you did day to day for 6 months to prepare for this?
I do see lots of younger people and the younger generations that are very interested. It's difficult to find someone who wants to be the administrator of the camp and to run the camp fully. You need one person overlooking it all. But we do have people that are interested in being at camp. They were campers themselves. They came to camp. We're interested in finding someone else that's new also. So it's just a thing of getting the dates set up correctly. And to get these kids involved, we have money to pay people to be directors and administrators of camp. And we're going to start doing that. Once we find those right contacts, it has to fit together. The time schedule, the location and places. A lot of these younger people have families already, so they need to be a little closer to home, which is fine for a year or two. But it will happen. We're working on it, and I think it's going to be coming together.
So do you see the camp continuing pretty much the way it was before 2020?
Again, that's up to the new administrators. You know, we can shorten it, we can lengthen it, we can do a lot more. You know, we do a lot of hands-on activities and kind of interpersonal activities and media activities. And so I think that younger generation has some brilliant ideas, so it may change. Camp changes every year, believe it or not, because we have different staff members from different regional areas of California that come with brilliant ideas. So our camp never looks the same. It is from 8 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. It is action-packed. They don't get a lot of downtime. And there's all sorts of really fabulous workshops. We bring people from the community in, and we're bringing a lot of people that work in tech companies in. So it's changing because basically, that's what happens. Each generation changes. So we're working with them, and we just need someone to kind of take over the realm a little bit because we are that, you know, we are that boomer generation. And, you know, I'm 72 already. So campers love to have an avoir at camp, but they also need to have, you know, leadership that's a little younger, which they're there. They come. We have that leadership already, but no one really is there that wants to be there full time, that wants to lead it. And that's okay. We'll be there to assist them and to advise them. So it's fine. So we're hoping to have a camp. I cannot say for sure that it's going to happen, but it's 90% chance that it will.
Okay. From Joanne, we'll pass to Eduardo Eusebio, conference. You've been involved with, you know, 19 organizing them yourself with a few, and then a lot of co-chairs, a lot of other involvements. You've seen the transition to digital in 2020. You've accompanied this. You've been a counselor and advisor to me as well, and I appreciate that. How do you see tell us a little bit of a historical, and then let's move to what you see as a future.
Thank you, Denise. The conference came out of a need, actually, a need in 1977. In order to meet the requirements of the Bilingual Education Act and the law versus Nichols that required the teachers to be prepared to deal with students that came, particularly from the Azores, where they were not bilingual, they were mostly monolingual Portuguese. Now, I put those two, the coin up there for a purpose before I continue. Let me explain. And the coins, actually, if you look at the Joanne's coin, it says to foster and sponsor and perpetuate the Portuguese culture. That is actually on the caravela, okay, on the on the ship, and that goes so appropriate in about the navigating, okay, navigating into the future. And when we started in 1977 with the first conference, we navigated from community to community. To do what? To inspire, encourage, and motivate people to become teachers and to prepare them to deal with the necessities of the Portuguese children that there were students in their classrooms. And that went really well. As you attended some of them, there were a lot of people attending. And that was the first phase from 1977 to 1998. And then some of you may recall in 1998, with the Prop 2227, the approach to bilingual education changed, and that need was no longer required to be taken care. Yet we took upon ourselves to continue to work and prepare those teachers to have the best practices and the best tools to deal with immigrant children. That was our purposes. That was our beginning of the conference. And that's what we invested so much time and effort. And when I like to think that we were successful, because from a handful of teachers that existed in 1977, we came up with a bunch, many, not only teachers, administrators, principals, superintendents, the whole, you name it. Then from 1998 to the present, the conference adopted itself to be a colloquium for ideas, for interchange, like today, interchanging ideas, best approaches, but to how to deal with the needs of the community. And that's what we have done. And thanks to you, the last 3 conferences have been online. Now, let's thank, if we can, what we learned from the pandemic, the COVID, is that we can have a gathering at a distance. And we weren't used to that. We didn't know that. Heck, we didn't even have cell phones 14 years ago. So things have their evolution. People think, well, this was always done, through emails and Twitter and what have you. No, a fax machine in 1980s was quite a bit of technology. And I was so pleased when I was used to send a fax to the Azores when it was there midnight and then get an answer when it was in the morning over here. That was great. Instead of, trying to get a phone that did not work sometimes and an 8-hour or 7-hour difference, whatever it was. So technology was not always on our side as it is today. And we had to take advantage of that and move on to the future. That's what I wanted to get to. So as I see it, there got to be 2 components to this conference, and I hope that we'll continue, at the very least, to do 50 conferences. I know that Mayor Betancourt and I, we're dedicated to that effort, and I know he's not gonna say and let it die, because there is no reason. There's a lot more stuff. Today has been very interesting, and we'll talk about some of the things that I've heard today. Some of you already did. So with the Zoom that did not exist 5 years ago, I mean, you're talking about, we think these things have always been there, right? The phones and Zoom and whatever. We see in the future that there will be a section like we're having right now at a long distance with people, whatever they might be. And some areas were going to be people together, eating, drinking, and having a conversation and shaking hands. It has to be that. Probably it might be in groups, not just one group, one place, but 2 or 3 groups in 3 different halls, probably. We talk about the halls. And let's not forget about that. The halls is something that is not taken advantage of, if I may use that word, because there are so many. I think you mentioned 88 or something to that effect, halls that can be a point of un ponto de encontro, best Portuguese word that I can think of, for lack of a better one in English, where it can be used to have these multi-group getting togethers with a Zoom link like we have it right now with other people that cannot attend. But there is ways, and I'm sure there are others even better than I can think of, to continue this work of bringing people together. We're changing ideas. And I'd like to talk about those that we brought up earlier today, but maybe later on. I don't know. That's the conference as I saw it and as I see it coming.
That would actually be a good idea to come back and bring those and get your perspective of some of the things that were discussed in other panels today, and get perspectives from everyone else that might have followed as well. Do you see a conference more of from your perspective, a hybrid version, in other words?
I think it has to be. I don't see how it cannot be any different. I know I learned a lot from you and others that came after the last day of the conference to the hospitality room and told us, you ought to do this, you ought to do that, you ought to do the other. Why did you invite so on and so forth? Those ideas we have to be exchanged. And it can sometimes a lot better on a less formal situation. At least that's my perspective of it. And I think that those were always very pleasant exchanges that we had with people. I might say, I think I recall you give it the name of hostility room instead of hospitality room. But it were productive in that someone listened and someone improved the conference by having those talks.
The reason I'm asking, Eduardo, is because funding is not what it used to be, as you know. The organizations that funded the conference, businesses are tightening up, for, ad programs and things like that. And I just had a conference and I attended in the Azores on Pedro de Silveira, one of the Azores in Portugal, not just the Azores, but all of Portugal, great writers of the 20th century. And it was interesting. It was at the University of the Azores, and we were talking to each other. I mean, there were 9 panelists, 9 conference participants, or nine people who made a conference, not in the panel, but in a presentation of, usually about 20 to 30 minutes. And then there were like 12 people in the audience, which were so one person was up there, the other 9 were going to speak either before or after. And then there were 3 that were there, a couple of curious folks and one other, with responsibilities in the university. And I see that at Fresno State. We just had our first in-person event yesterday, and with Lotta Goulart, which I think all of you know, Portuguese-American poet. And Lotta did a wonderful job, read wonderfully. We had, it's not like we didn't have anybody. We had, I think it was 26 people. But before the pandemic, we were doing events with 75 and 80 people. And so it questions us, do we continue this, with such an audience? The last one I did with Lotta, but we were planning on doing an in-person event when I had to test it. Last one I did with Lotta online, we had over 500 people that watched it. So, that's kind of my thoughts on it. What are yours? I mean, it's never, in your thoughts, it's never going to go back to just in person. It's going to have some kind of other presence.
That's my opinion. And things can even improve this in the way we do things. By the way, you mentioned the government of the Azores, and I should have mentioned that we've always had a lot of support throughout the years from the government of the Azores, without exception. The last couple of years, we've had it almost every year, even the first one in the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, you see now there are 2 things here as I see it. One is people are using to the Zoom conferences, They say, why should I go here or there? Why don't they just put it online so I can see it and participate? There's that aspect of it. There's also some people that they're still a little bit reluctant to go places, where a lot of people get together. My wife is one of them. I've taken all 3 shots plus the booster. And if they give another one tomorrow, I'll go out. I want to be as vaccinated as I can. And so far, so good. And I have traveled to Portugal during the pandemic many times. I haven't got COVID yet. Maybe I shouldn't have been being so arrogant about it. Things happen tomorrow morning. Things happen. So there's that aspect. As far as funds are concerned, and a lot of what talked about the endowments and what have you.
Let's save that one for a little bit later.
Right.
Let's save that. I want to go to Bernice, and we'll come back to that.
Thank you.
Bernice, your thoughts. So a little bit of a synopsis on what the golf tournament, which is a major fundraiser for Luso American Education Foundation, how it began and how it has been a fundraiser, and what, of course, you can play golf in a pandemic, as it's been proven. So, how has it? What's been the trajectory of the golf tournament, and how do you see it in the future?
Okay, thank you, Denise. Well, actually, this would have been our 26th year of the golf tournament, but because of the pandemic, we didn't have it one year. So this year we're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary. So this started, like I said, 26 years ago as just the Luso American Education Foundation golf tournament. And then with the passing of my husband, it was suggested and I guess voted on at that time to name it the San Policas Memorial Golf Tournament. And then with the recent passing in the last 3 years of Manuel Rosario, then we've changed the name again to the Policas and Rosario Memorial Golf Tournament. So it's been going on, and the same people pretty much are on the committee over the last 26 years. And we've been very successful. Last year, I think we raised a little over, almost $19,000 for the golf tournament. And we had 71 golfers. And in prior years, we usually get between 50 and 60 golfers and make between $15,000 and $20,000 at the event. But it's a really fun event. We're hoping to attract younger golfers because a lot of the people that start off 26 years ago are, kind of aging in place and aren't going to be able to play golf like they used to. And so we're always looking for young people to also be on the golf committee. We have, I think, about 8 people on our committee right now, and it's been really active. We have a couple of young people on the committee. They have new ideas, which is good for the future. And so we're kind of meshing the old way of doing things with the new way of doing things and taking advantage of some of the things that are out there for social media for us to advertise on and things like that. So as we speak right now, I'm right in the middle of the golf tournament for this year, which is going to be next Friday. So we're hoping to make more than 20,000 this year. We have some sponsors. If it wasn't for the sponsors, like I've said every year, we wouldn't be having a golf tournament. And because the golfers, we don't really make money on them unless they're on the auction or the raffle prizes, but we're not making money on them golfing. So it's sponsors and then our raffles and our auction. So this year we did something different. We're doing an online auction instead of a live auction. And so we're going to see how successful that is. It's too early to tell yet, but we're asking people if you have some items you would like to donate we've sent out the link to this Better World is what the company is called, that is going to manage that auction item. And the auction will be going on until after the golf tournament. The day of the golf, I think it is the day after the golf tournament. So people can go online and bid on, we have several prizes out there to bid on prizes. And if you have something that you can donate to the auction, that would be much appreciated too. So where do I see it going in the future? I can't see why it wouldn't continue. Golfing is golfing. There's not, the thing is getting the young people in with ideas on how to promote it better and getting more sponsors, because we tend to go after the same people every year and they get a little tired, I think, of donating every year. So we're trying to find ways of reaching out to new people, and in addition to the ones that support us every year. So the major change is technology, I think, and I think golfing is going to go on, and we'll do it as long as we have people that are willing to be on the committee and get golfers and get sponsors and, make this another success.
Yeah, and there's an innovation already, which is, as you mentioned, the auction being online. I mean, that's something new. It hasn't happened in the past. This is the first year.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just one of these things we need to adapt and look. And that's a very good point. And sometimes community, especially if it's a Portuguese American, they get hit for everything. And after a while, it's just so much that's your business. And now, profit margins sometimes are good, but sometimes they're not because people are competing. And so indeed, we need to go after mainstream businesses that may not be Portuguese.
And it means a lot of times making contacts. I mean, we send letters out and we do all these things, but sometimes you just have to call people up and, see if they'll, sometimes they forget. If you send it too early, they forget. If you send it too late, then they already spent their money. So it's timing is important too. And and again, we have people that have been making phone calls that have been to past donors and seeing if they're going to help us again this year. So it takes that kind of thing too to reach out to people too. And that's, time consuming. but we've kind of discovered people don't relate well to emails. They do better responding to text messages, you know, and so and of course mail, they're throw it away, I guess.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
forget about it, put it in a
Well,
file, and they go, oh, okay, that happened
and
already.
and exactly for young people, and I'm talking about, of course, not golfers, but for to reach young people in their teens and even beginning in their
Yeah.
20s, as Lucy Van Syock, Superintendent Lucy Ferreira Van Syock mentioned, TikTok is what kids use. I mean, if you you know, if you want to promote something, if you want to promote, for
See, we haven't done
example, you
that.
know, I'm sure you know if you want to promote the summer camp, is have 10 campers from the past, you know, do each a TikTok video and upload it themselves. It doesn't, you know, they upload it to their own accounts, and all of a sudden the thing just goes, you know,
Yeah.
wild, you know, to everything. So Facebook is no longer a young person thing, and even
No.
Twitter's a different world, and Instagram is a multi-generational one, but it doesn't allow for certain programs. So indeed, well, thank you, Bernice. We'll come back to some of the questions that Eduardo had, or comments after, you know, we go through
Okay.
the panel. Manuel Betancourt, do you?
Oh.
Manuel, you're on.
Okay, I just unmute myself. Okay, how long do I have? Everybody's talking for 10 minutes. Do I have 20 minutes or less? Because I don't want to go.
We don't want to be bored. We just talked about TikTok. Okay, it's short and sweet. So
Okay.
you can go 20 minutes, but if Eduardo, Zev, you and I, because we're all start falling asleep, then you'll just hear us, you know, snore.
Just let me know, then I'll stop and I'll skip something. Well, first, I'm going to talk about the 12 celebrations of the World American Education Foundation. I'm going to mention what we have done in the past, especially for the last 20 some years that I have been involved with the 12 celebrations. And I'd like to change when I became the first time chair was in 1996. I was just elected president of the American Education Foundation. And I decided that I should change something. That what I did, first of all, was to send some letters to some people, Portugal and in the United States. So I sent 16 letters at the time. I mailed them because we had no computers, we had no printers. And the first letter that I sent was to Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton answered, and we printed the letter on the Portugal program. Then I'll send one to Anderson Guimarães. He was the ambassador of Portugal in Washington, D.C. and the United States of America. I sent one to Jorge Sampaio. He didn't come, but he sent Ferro Rodrigues. As you know, he was the president of the General Assembly. At the time, he was the minister for do Trabalho e Solidariedade when he came. I sent one to Mota Amaral, and he sent a nice letter. I sent one to Governor Pete Wilson, which he sent a letter and we printed on the program. And we sent one to Secretary of Comunidades at that time was Engenheiro José Lelo, and to our politicians in Sacramento. There were Michael Machado, Assemblyman Fred Aguiar, Aguayo, John Vasconcelos. At the time he was Assemblyman, then he became a senator. Jim Costa, senator, and Henry Melo, he was a state senator. John Vasconcelos and Henry Melo were the ones that participated in the Portugal celebrations many times. So in 1996, also on that year, we had the Portugal parade in Turlock, and on that parade, we had a lot of people there, and was a lot of organizations involved. And one thing that I want to say to you, I have all the 24 the Portugal celebrations that I have all the information. So I have a lot of information for these days, these years, what we did, what we didn't do. In '97, we had in Santa Clara the Day of Twelve with a parade and dinner. And in Santa Clara this year, 1997, we had 54 organizations that participated. In 1998, we had a parade at Kelly Park because at that year, the Portuguese museum had been dedicated the year before. So we had a parade at Kelly Park. And the dinner was at Newark Pavilion. We had over 300 people in attendance. And also at that time, during those few years, from 96 to about 99, probably, we had raised the raising of the Portuguese flag on several cities, created in San Francisco, in San Jose, Newark, Santa Clara, and Fremont, etc. So the symposiums also used to have symposiums almost every twice. One of the symposiums was always sponsored, done by Portuguese Athletic Club, and the other one by PFSA. At the time, it was UPC in San Leandro. And also, during these years, we had a lot of events, so like between 10, 15, and sometimes more events throughout California. And we had a program naming all the events and what was taking place, everything. Because when you had the council here, what was his name, Antonio Zé Carvalho, he told us that we should do this, we should have the well celebrations with one program covering the whole state of California. So that's what we did. We had sometimes 10, 12, 15 events during that time. What we had also was always at this time, well, of course, we had the parades, flag raising, luncheons, or dinners, where awards were given to students and community leaders, like symposiums, concerts of classic music, of fathers, etc. So on these 12 celebrations, I would like to emphasize three that I'll never forget that were special for me. One was in 2006 at in Sacramento, the capital, the rotunda of the capital in Sacramento. We had one there with first of all, we went to the Capitol, we had some hors d'oeuvres, we had the band playing at the lobby. We had Portuguese wines, and then from there we went to the Hyatt Regency, the 15th floor, where we had a dinner. We had only 66 people. This was the lowest people that we had in the whole celebration. Yeah, I remember Bernice went to that one. I saw her there. And at that time, we had only 66 people because our dinner, our event cost $125 a person. And on the same day, the American Fraternal Federation, they had a dinner, testimonial dinner for free in Sacramento. So we didn't have anybody from Sacramento. We had one person, the priest, the only one. Everybody was from the Bay Area. So this event, it's one that I'll never forget it. On the 2007, we had one in the rotunda of the city of San Jose, where we started the award for the Day to All Individual. So we started the award in 2007 at the City Hall, the rotunda of City Hall of San Jose. Was the first time. Then in 2008, we had the 50th we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Capolinos. It was the 50th that we have had a dinner at the IS Hall. We had over 400 people at this dinner. We had like 10, at least 10 events throughout the state. And the president of the Azores, Carlos Cesar, came. He participated on this event. So then from 2009 to the present, the Portugal participation has been decreasing gradually. Now we have like 100, 105 people, 110, 120. And that this year, 2022, we had 86 people at the Luz American Education Foundation, the Portugal luncheon in San Jose. So now that the Portugal parades are mainly done at Kelly Park when the museum has a year 12 over there. We seldom have symposiums now. We still have lunches and dinners celebrating the Portugal, and they are done mainly by Luz American Education Foundation. The classic music concerts in 2023, these concerts are integrated in the Portugal celebrations, which will be the 18th in 2023. And I think it may be the last one. The reason being that it costs approximately $10,000 to $12,000 each concert, because we have at least 55 musicians with the Mission Chamber Orchestra of San Jose. And also the politicians participating in the Portugal, they are not participating like before. And why are they not participating? I think one of the reasons is because they are trying to save money. 15, 25 years ago, when you had invited the president of Portugal and the Azores, and they rarely came, but they used to send representatives, but not now. Now things change. I'm on the board of the Portuguese Museum, and my task is to invite local and Portuguese dignitaries to participate in the Portugal in Kelly Park, where the museum is, and the day of Portugal parade is held. This year, invitations went to President of the Azores and Madeira, and I did not receive any response, either written or email, and nobody came to represent them. That's what happened. The only person that came was the Secretary of State for Internationalization this year. Nobody else came from Portugal for the Portugal. So to finish, is it 20 minutes? No, almost. To finish, in my opinion, the main reason we are having this less attendance to our events, including the Festa dos Santos, is since 1980s, immigration from Portugal to the United States has stagnated, almost stopped. In the late 1960s and 1970s, when I came to California, we were like at least 10,000, 11,000 a year that came from Portugal to the United States. Last year, 2021, a little over 800 people came, less than 1,000 last year. So what can we do about this? I don't think we can do much. This phenomenon of the immigration, we cannot control it. Now I ask, what can we do to change the Luz American Education Foundation, the Portugal celebrations, to have more participants, which are now in second, third generations? What will interest them to participate? That's my question, which I don't know what to answer. Do you?
No, that's what you're supposed, that was your homework, was to come up with those answers.
Well, I wish I could.
You didn't follow the prompts very well, Manuel, because that was your homework. You know.
I wish I could know what to do. If I knew, I would tell you.
Okay, yeah, we all do. There's no answers, no magic answer for anything. Thanks, Manuel, for that. But there is, let me ask you a very tough question, Manuel. You're going to hate me for this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do you see the Dia de Portugal? Because you've organized the great majority of them, and at least in the last, 25 years. How do you see the Dia de Portugal going from community to community as, maybe doing it in Southern California where it's never been done, with you chairing, but maybe a co-chair in Artesia or Chino or San Diego, or maybe do it. We've done it in the Valley, as you know, twice, once that it was agreed upon, and another one that Eduardo Eusebio insisted that we do it in Sanger, or Selma, I should say, Selma, with Tisha Cardozo, our good friend Tisha. And both of them were pretty successful. The first one probably a bit more successful than the second one. I think the first one we had about 185 people. The second one, I think, only about 105 or so, 110. But how do you see this? How do you see the Dia de Portugal in order? Because you were talking about the numbers. And maybe San Jose is tired of doing it all the time. Who knows? People get tired of doing things all the time, as you know. And so maybe we look at San Diego and we look at, some other areas where it has never been done. What are your thoughts?
Okay, in my opinion, I think we should rotate the Dia de Portugal celebrations. It could be San Diego, it could be Artesia, it could be the Valley, it could be San Jose. But for these 20-some years that I have been the chair of the Dia de Portugal, most of the time it's in San Jose. It's not on San Jose, Santa Clara, Newark, and
the Bay Area, right?
The Bay Area. So it would be on this area once in a while, but I think it should be also in other parts of the state.
Do you think there's appetite for that? Do you think other areas of the state have appetite to do another festa?
That's the question, that if they are willing to do it. At least we should continue doing the symposiums, which are very important on this day. Well, it doesn't have to be in San Jose, it doesn't have to be, but a symposium, if it's person to person, it should be on the one area where people can go, can walk. But I think I feel that it's good to have this Zoom, but nothing like the real thing. So I think we should try to do try to go to someplace else, to other areas of the state, to celebrate the Day of Portugal, celebrate the Day of Portugal.
Yeah, não se esqueças, Camões.
Come on.
Thanks, Manuel. We're gonna maybe open up. We have about we can continue another 15 or so minutes. We do need a little bit of a break.
We're
gonna get there. We're gonna get to Joy. We do need to get a little bit of a break between this and 4 o'clock, the one that's going to happen. So we're going to go back to Joanne for the scholarships. Tell us a little bit of the situation.
I think Denise has a question.
Yeah, this is regarding the Dia de Portugal. I think the timing is pretty bad too. June is always a busy month with graduations and people taking vacations. I kind of experienced that as one of the reasons we don't get a good turnout at that celebration in June.
Yeah, we don't, but we can't change it. Unfortunately, that's the date. We can't. I mean, we could celebrate it later, and Manuel and the Dia de Portugal has been celebrated a bit sometimes, like on the 18th or whatever, and sometimes on the 6th or whatever.
I know there's been some discussion about having it really would be our celebration of our anniversary of the foundation, and we don't have to stick to June for that. It's supposed to be our anniversary and the Portugal together, kind of, but it is an issue having it in June. I mean, there's festas, there's everything else going on.
Yeah, it is an issue, but I think that's something we let me move back to Joanne for the scholarships, and then we can
Okay.
have this discussion if we have time. Okay.
Yes, and I'll keep it short. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Luso American Education Foundation scholarships and grants. And I just first want to say that the foundation is a branch of the Luso American Financial, just as the Luso American Fraternal Federation is also a branch of the Luso American Financial. And I think that's important for us to also just consider, because there are people that are listening to us that aren't aware of all of that, because we are the arm that does the education part for the fraternal organization. Originally, our foundation was founded by the Federation. It was founded by a committee that was formed in 1963. So we were part of the fraternal. And then in 1963. So in 1958, the fraternal gave the first scholarship to Arthur Askins, who studied in Portugal. He later became a professor at UC Berkeley. And then after that, we formed the foundation. The Federation formed the foundation, and that's where we are today. So we are just basically one of three parts, and we all work together. I know that this morning when we were listening to some of the panelists talk, people from the Federation, I think they weren't aware that we are really part of the Federation also. So I just want to talk about the mission. Our mission and vision is to advance the Portuguese culture and language in the United States through education by supporting qualified students in accessing higher education and fostering lifelong learning. That's really important because we give out many, many scholarships. For an organization, we're pretty good size. Most of our, a lot of our money that comes for scholarships and grants is given by the community, and they work hard for that. The Fraternal Federation has scholarships for high school and youth and adults, which includes 20, 30 family scholarships that go to members of the fraternal organization. When we have our convention with the fraternal organization, the queens in attendance raise money for fraternal scholarships, and they receive a percentage of that back through a scholarship for them to put towards college. And that's really important because we do that. And they were talking today about, the Holy Ghost associations and how the queens, maybe they could get scholarships for college. Well, we do that as a federation for the kids that really work hard to sell tickets, at $5 each or whatever, and that raise a lot of money for the fraternal scholarships. So these they can be, young teens that are both girls and boys. They can now both do that, and it's been done now for a few years. The fraternal, the Luso American Education Foundation also gives scholarships to non-members. We have a category under the foundation, and that it can be for members that apply, and also for people that are not members of the organization. They just have to be, they have to qualify for all of our guidelines, and they can apply. These scholarships are given throughout the United States. And we have youth scholarships that we give for teens that are graduating from high school going on to college. We have adult scholarships and there's many categories. There's families that give money for postgraduate work. There are graduate scholarships that for students that are doing research. And we also do study abroad, which they were talking today. We finance programs where professors have taken groups overseas. And also for people that want to take Portuguese for summer sessions. I was one of those persons many, many moons ago. And then also family scholarships, again, where they can go into certain majors. So we give lots of various scholarships. It's all on our websites. And we have our volunteers that read those scholarships. And basically some of the qualifications are you have Portuguese descent, or you study Portuguese, or that you're preparing for a career in Portuguese, maybe as a teacher, or majoring in or getting a doctorate at whatever. So those are basically the applicants that we've been getting, and we've given over $1 million since we began our foundation, where part of it was to really help students to go on to higher education. So that's it. And during COVID, it was interesting. We've given out our scholarships during the COVID epidemic for the last 3 years. We received less applicants. And part of it, I think, is because high school students, they weren't on campuses. So they didn't get the help of counselors to help them fill out forms and to do things. And it was just postponed, just like universities were closed for a while too, and it was online. So this year, I'm sure that we'll get more numbers of kids applying for grants, and more postgraduate work will be done. And I'm very proud of our organization. They worked hard. Most of us here, even today, we do this as volunteers. And I work on the committees where I spend money. So I'm on the committee that gives scholarships, and I'm on the committee that runs the camp, and we basically spend the money. Everyone else is trying to raise the money for it. So I feel like I'm always in the wrong category, even though we all work on each other's committees. We all work on each other's committees and support us. And I really think that really the younger generation is stepping up to the plate, and we need to prepare them for that. So yeah, maybe our organizations, need to get together. Maybe for Dia de Portugal, we could do what we used to do, in the late 60s at the Goodman's Hall. There are other organizations that also worked with us, and we had many more people come because we did it together. And I think what we realize is less immigrants are coming to America. We need to realize that we are Luso-Americans that go back many generations, and we're not all from the same regional areas. We are Portuguese Americans, and we need to reach out and these organizations are going to all come together in the next 20 years. We have to come together in order to survive. The younger generation, may identify as being Federation kids or Foundation kids, but that's one reason why the Foundation is open to people that aren't members in our organization, because once, they have that love of learning and learning Portuguese and our culture, that's what brings us together. We're marrying each other from inner islands, from other countries, and we're marrying people that aren't of Portuguese descent. And once they learn more about our culture, they become a part of us. And I think that's really important. And we see that in our applicants. Many of them, maybe in an essay, they say, oh, they eat a malasada. Well, that's not very much Portuguese. But the thing is, if we can encourage them to be, to go on and get higher education, to check back with us and tell us what their successes and their careers are, then we can use them in the future to help us identify with Portuguese elements of politics, of our culture, and of our states. So I want to end it at that.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. Indeed, and that's why the conference has all of these all of these different panels that have multiple generations. We have everybody from every single generation, and in my purpose of this conference is not to tell them anything, it's to listen to them. And I'm only hopeful that we can listen, those of us in our 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we can listen to them and then act upon it, because all too often in the Portuguese American community, we have listened to young people, and we've been doing this for a while, and they don't listen. And we listen, and we say, sure, and then nothing happens. It's just basically a lot of young people, and we saw that a little bit this morning, a lot of young people are a little bit frustrated because things that to us make sense, but to them it doesn't make sense, and so the future is theirs. Eduardo, some of the questions that you had or comments. Yes.
1 minute.
We have still a few minutes. I just wanted Joanne to talk about the scholarships before we go transition to this.
The future. We're talking about navigating into the future, and this should be easy. It should be easy because we have a vision which is written down, sponsor, perpetuate the Portuguese language and culture, to advance the language and culture. That's what we have to do. Now, just the two suggestions. One, duplicate, triplicate, quadruplicate the summer camps. So mention that was a good idea. Well, let's think of a better idea. It doesn't have to be just Joanne. Can be other people doing it. Elon Musk, a person that I don't particularly like. So when he was asked, someone is going to produce more electric cars than you. He says, I don't care, as long as they produce more electric cars, which is good for the environment. So if more people do these things and we can help them and we can partnership with them, then the better. Portuguese, teaching Portuguese, how difficult it is to teach Portuguese in the public schools. Let's concentrate in the private schools. It's a lot easier there. And even there, we haven't done very much. We can do a lot more. And I'm not talking about it's collectively, not the foundation. And so those are kind of my thoughts. And of course, we talk about money, endowments. Tuition cost $200 in 1960s, 5, 6, something like that. Now it's 7,000, 8,000. And they're talking about, the cheap colleges. I'm not talking about Stanford or things like that. But it went at the public institutions from $70. I think that's how much I paid, to 6,000 or 7,000, whatever it is now. So obviously we have to have more money, and the community can help. And with that, I will pass the word on to somebody else. I appreciate again all that you do, Denise, and all of the panelists, and all of the topics that you mentioned. All the time, I'm not going to mention because they're all there, are of importance, and in particular the ones about the youth. Oh, halls.
Yeah,
Let's
we
work.
have,
Let's start having the young people take over those halls, and that would be something good. All right.
There are two things, and I'll move to Joanne just a little bit, but let me answer just a couple of things, because two of the points that Eduardo made are, I don't have, years ago, I asked a Portuguese professor, Maria Lucia Lipecki, Brazilian that lived in Portugal for many years and studied under Vitorino Nemesio, and I said, Professora, I wanted to ask you what your specialty is, because I really don't know. I've heard your conferences, but I don't know what your specialty is. And, because all university professors like to be specialized in something. And she, in a particular, they're specialists on Queiroz or Saramago or somebody. And she said, and I'll try to imitate her beautiful Brazilian accent. She said, Diniz, eu não sou especialista em nada. Eu agora ia ficar toda a vida ligada a livro, a autor. Há tanta coisa boa para ler. And so I say the same thing. I'm not a specialist in anything, but if I have a little bit of specialty, is in the language that I've been, it's been my career for almost 30 years. And Eduardo touched upon something that's very important. I think that we need to carry forward, and I think the foundation needs to do, from my perspective, even a better job. And it's already done a lot. That to say the foundation hasn't done anything, that would be an injustice. But that is the teaching, as the both Joanne and Eduardo mentioned, the mission statement. So our issue is quite simple. That's why I told the president of Portugal that nobody wanted to listen. Everybody looked at me like, but I had 2.5 minutes in a public setting to say something. And I said, we have 11 high schools in California teaching Portuguese. There are 4,424 schools in California teaching Portuguese. Teaching high school. There are 4,400 high schools in California. We only have 11. If we do not quadruple that, if we don't have at least 1% of the high schools in California teaching Portuguese, forget it. It's not going to happen. We're going to disappear. That's just, boom, boom, boom. And I said, and we don't need the money. We have money. The community has money. We just have to put our resources where we feel they is important. If we can spend in the Valley and even Northern California and Southern California, but if we can spend $85,000 to promote a bullfight, and I'm from Terceira Island, we like those bulls, but if we can do that, and Manuel right there, the Praça, but if we can spend $85,000 to do a bullfight, we certainly can do an endowment, because indeed, the successful programs and in California, as far at a university level, have endowments. We have been doing PBBI, as all of you know, at Fresno State for almost 4 years now. We don't have an endowment. We've been doing because I've been working like a stupid fool. But and we have a president who speaks Portuguese and likes Portuguese, and we'll do this and do that. But let me just tell you that in 2019, when PBBI began, in 2020, right, about a year before the pandemic, they started the Italian Studies program. They've always taught Italian there, but never had a studies program. They started the Italian Studies program 2.5 years later, and during a pandemic, the Italian Studies program has an endowment of $550,000. So we either learn to do that, or we disappear. That's just pretty simple when it comes to that, because I don't know anybody that wants to work as hard as I do over there as what I do. And to be honest with you, I'm not tooting my own horn, but it is what it is. And we see that in other language programs. People say, "Oh, why is this not happening in San Jose? Or why is this not happening in Fullerton? Or why is this not happening wherever?" Well, because people are smart. They don't want to work like a fool like I do, but I just want to, it's kind of a mission for me for the next few years. However, the issue is this: we need to, and I appreciate, and I know the public schools as well, I mean, the private schools, but for example, we finance San Joaquin Valley Memorial High School in Fresno. It's a Catholic high school. A lot of that money is from Portuguese money, a lot of that money, but we've never had Portuguese. If, people should say, no, I'm not giving you another $5,000 until you put Portuguese in there. We need to make this vocal. If we don't do this right now with the things that Manuel mentioned and Joanne and you, Eduardo, and Bernice, we all know immigration ended 40 years ago. Nobody's coming from the Azores, Madeira, or mainland Portugal. They actually need people to come in to Portugal right now. And you've been there quite a bit, Eduardo, you've seen them. So the people are not immigrating, and both mainland Portugal, the Azores and Madeira, if they are leaving, they're going to Europe because it's easier. They don't need a passport. They don't need, they're a nurse and they're making $1,500 or 1,500 euros in Portugal. They're going to go be a nurse in Germany for 2,900. There's nothing that stops them from doing that. It's a right of a European citizen. So immigration to America is, I think, a done deal. We can never say never, but at least for our generation, probably the next 20 or 30 years. I've preached enough. Joanne, you had a question or an answer.
Aren't we the 5th or 6th language spoken in the world now?
We're the 5th, but we never.
I had an eye opener this week at our community Portuguese school because some students came up and said, "Gee, boy, your tuition is not that much because we don't charge much." She goes, "But my company will match it," and I thought, for my community school, I can get matched money here. I didn't even think about that. So it's important that the Holy Ghost associations and our foundation, even for our golf tournament, when people are donating money, they can also match that with their organization. We could be doing a lot more of that. We just paid $200 at our Portuguese school this week, which is not much, but boy, that helps, pay for my teacher, because we didn't even think of that. And these are not necessarily Portuguese American people. They're people that want to move to Portugal next year. There are people that are interested in traveling to Portugal or to Brazil, so they're taking our Portuguese classes. So it's nice to get our Mesoamericans taking our Portuguese classes, but we need to be more inclusive because Portuguese is an international language now, and they're the ones that can help us to fund our community programs also and stuff. And I think that's really important. I think that's just the way we need to look. And yes, we need that younger generation in here, and they need to be coming up. They need to be the influencers of what we're doing. They need
better.
They can be on media better. They know how to do the tech stuff better. And that's really the answer. It's not, just schmoozing over o vinho de Porto at maybe de Portugal because these young kids aren't there. It's having, happy hours where these kids can come and then to learn about, a really important Portuguese American that works maybe at Google that can give me a little feedback and help me with my career and give me an internship, So that's what we need to look at now too in the future. So, I wish I was younger because I have all of the soul and the energy to influence people, but I just don't have the skills at this part of my life. So anyway.
Yeah, and so we're going to come up on the end. Thank you all for. I have a couple of things that, indeed, I think that what we need to do is move forward. As Eduardo said, the title is Navigating the Future. So move forward. And listen. We'll listen. That's what we're going to be doing for the next 4 days, is listening, at least me, and to different generations, and look at some of these possibilities. There were already 3 or 4, good things that happen. The endowment idea for higher education, as it's called, or university level teaching, is a great idea. And just as it was mentioned by one of the presenters in our prior panel, you can't think of having an endowment at every single university. If we're going to have one in Bay Area, one in the Central Valley, and one in Southern California. That's all we can do. We can't say, oh, well, we're going to have, 15. That's sometimes our problem. We're going to have 15 endowments. No, we're not. If we can do 3, that would be great.
Yes.
And the Portuguese language, I actually have an announcement I'll be making at the end, but the Portuguese language teaching, it can be done. We have a program at Fresno State to turn 10 to 12 Spanish teachers into Portuguese teachers. It can be done.
Yes.
And so we just need to do, and our demographics have changed. This is something that we're not really discussing on this total 4 days, but I think we need to maybe bring a little bit in. Our demographics have changed. I have people who tell me that Hilmar is growing immensely with people coming from, and Manuel knows this, from the Bay Area, from Santa Clara and San Jose that are retired or selling their homes for, that they bought for $50,000. They're selling them for, a couple $1 million. They're buying a beautiful home in Hilmar for $600,000. And then they're putting, the rest in the bank or whatever they want to do with it. So the community is changing. I mean, last year when we had this conference, one of the invitees was Luis, a Portuguese language teacher in San Jose. Luis, I can't think of his last name now. My gosh, Manuel will help me. What's Luis's last
Luis
name?
Nunes.
Luis Nunes. She's at the Mint. Last year when Luis was on this conference, he said he had 128 students, 11 Portuguese, 11. And I thought he meant 11%, but, he said, no, I have 11 of them that were Portuguese. So the demographics are changing, the community is moving. The other day I was looking at the census. We have over 500 cities in California with Portuguese people. 500 cities that maybe 20 years ago didn't have any Portuguese. But as we mentioned in prior, people get their degrees, younger people who are not younger now. I mean, they were younger, they're still younger compared to me and us here. But these are people that were, 18, 20 years old, 20 in 2000, and now they're 42, 43, some of our kids' age. And they're not living in the Portuguese traditional towns. They're not living in Artesia. They're not living in Tulare or San Jose. They're living maybe in a whole different area. And so all of this we need to talk about, and hopefully we can come to some ideas that we can put forth as action items that we can all take. Luz America, the Fraternal, the PFSA, and the Portuguese media, doesn't make any sense to do a Portuguese radio show or a Portuguese newspaper for a community that no longer exists, when people don't read any longer in that language. So there's lots of different things that we can do. I thank you all for your efforts. I thank you for your service. Obviously, I'm not the person to do this, but I will, to Luz American Education Foundation. And I thank you for your service to the community and also to this conference, and for participating in the last now almost hour and a half on this conference to focus on the role and the role that needs to be maybe realigned, but needs to be continue to be a proactive one in the community. The Luz American Education Foundation has a very important role in the community. So thank you all. Take care.
Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you. So I will. We're going to move to our. Maybe Bernice can help me by getting. I think Annalise not here yet. So hopefully we can. You
I'll
can
text
do
her.
that. And I know that Kayla Ferreira is already here. And so we're going to move to bring the next panel. It should be starting at 4. But we will start at maybe a minute or two early if the young people are here. And that will be our next panel. So thanks to the panel called, as you heard, and as you heard the different participations, the panel that we've just finished was Luso American Education Foundation. So focusing on the foundation and focusing on Luso American Education Foundation navigating projects in a post-pandemic world. The panel that we're going to start in just a few minutes is basically perspectives from Generation Z. I had to learn all of the different generation terms. I'm aware of the boomers, because they're my generation, and aware of the millennials, but I have all the X's and Z's and everything else now. And so Generation Z supposedly is like between the ages of 16, 17 and 26, 27. And so hopefully we had 4 young people invited. One of them could not attend, because of family reasons. But we still have three of them. One of them is already on here, as you can see, which is Kayla Fajeda, most amazing young lady that is at Fresno State. And go Bulldogs. And of course, you have your Bulldog shirt on. And then we also, I have on here Ana Maria Adang. That should be Annalicia, right?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, so we'll promote Annalicia to a panel. And I'm looking for Nicole Bettencourt from the Northern Valley that had agreed to be on as well. Hopefully she'll be on soon, because the panel was for 4 o'clock, not for, we're at 3:55. And so thank you all for joining us. And again, I'm trying to promote Annalicia to a panelist. I don't know if they have their camera on yet. Those of you joining us.
She said she's logging in now.
Okay, fantastic.
That's what she said.
Those of you that are those of you who are on social media, sorry, we have some interruptions once in a while. It's we are trying to do the panels consecutively, and so just as if you were at a live conference, take this time to go and get yourself a cup of coffee or donuts, or
you can take me off, Denise,
or
as being a panelist, right?
Or a filoche or something like that. And then we will go ahead and start here at 4 o'clock. Before we do start, Kayla, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Fantastic. So we're waiting for the other two panelists to join us, but since we're on and since people already are watching us, I wanted to ask you how your studies are at Fresno State. Well, I think you're almost finished.
Yes, really good. It's my last year. I'm liberal studies major. I'm planning on hopefully doing a master's program at Fresno State as well. So I'm going to start looking at applications and all of that pretty soon. But yeah, after this semester, I have one more semester left in my bachelor's.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Annalicia on as well, and we're waiting for Nicole Bettencourt. Bernice, you're back on. Okay. Somehow we have, okay. Well, and welcome Annalicia as well. We'll start, we'll wait a few more minutes if you guys don't mind, because I want to make sure that Nicole can join us. So we kind of have Northern California, Central California, 2 parts. We weren't able to get anybody from Southern California, but hopefully they are in a few other segments that we have, including the one we had before. So for those of you joining us on social media outlets, and those of you just joining us, a few people just joining us here also on the Zoom webinar. This is the first day and the last, and we always save the best for last. So the last of the panels for today of the Luz American Education Foundation Conference. The conference began 46 years ago. This is our 46th conference. So it began actually 45. This is the 46th because the way the numbering system goes. And we are happy to have all of you join us. Our last conference, our last panel of today is Navigating the Future: Perspectives from Generation Z. We're waiting for one more panelist to join us. Tomorrow we'll be here from 8:15 in the morning, more or less, 8 o'clock in the morning, until the last panel is of 90 minutes, so until about 2:30. We start with a panel called, or a presentation called The Azorean Spirit, and talking about books that have been translated from Portuguese to English that those who are Azorean background do not read Portuguese may be interested in acquiring, and to know a little bit more about the Azorean identity. At 9 a.m., Navigating the Future, Perspectives from Millennials. So we'll have a panel of 5 different millennials. That generation will be joining us. And then we have at 10:30, an hour and a half later, Navigating the Future, Portuguese Language Schools in California Public and Private Schools. We have 4 different people participating, one from a private school and 3 from public high schools. And then we will take a break for lunch between 12 and 1. And at 1 o'clock, we come back with our last panel for Saturday, which is Navigating the Future literary perspectives in California, writers and poets and publishers. The idea is to talk about literary perspectives in the Portuguese American community, from writing to publishing. And then we will have our presentation, of course, on Sunday. We continue, and I'm not going to read the program, not going to bore you with it, but it does continue on Sunday, and it does continue on Monday as well, and Tuesday. And so the last day will be Tuesday of the 46th annual conference on education and culture of the Luso-American Education Foundation. Again, the title for this year, Navigating the Future, the Portuguese Diaspora in California. And Nicole has just joined us. So we welcome Nicole Betancourt also to the panel. And so I think we're about ready to start. I don't see Nicole yet. It's probably still logging in. And I know that all of you are on mute. And then, of course, when we start, we'll get ourselves off of mute. So there's Nicole. Welcome. And so welcome. I'm so happy to have this panel because it's all three girls, and it was actually going to be four girls. So, this is woman power here, definitely a minority when it comes to this panel, but wonderful because sometimes we do panels. And so those of you who will criticize because we did one panel where we had, I think, 3 men and one lady, one woman and 3 men. Just remember that this one had only 3 ladies. Okay, so it's pretty much pretty much even, or going the other way around. But lots of young people are involved, and the community has changed so much that indeed young women have sometimes a bigger role in the Portuguese American community than young guys because they don't want to, they don't want to be involved. We've seen that in my years of teaching at Tulare Union High School. The last few years, most of the officers were all young women. Right now at Fresno State, the Portuguese club is kind of, it needs to be, it kind of died off, didn't die, but went to sleep during the pandemic, but we now need to start it. And I'm actually thinking of a Ferreira girl, Kelsey, to maybe lead the effort since she's a freshman and has a lot of energy. And the same thing when the Portuguese club at Fresno State was operating and doing some great things in 2019 and 2020 until we got the pandemic. It was basically 5 officers, 4 girls, and 1 boy. And so it's changed quite a bit. So welcome to all 3 of you. Thank you for taking the time. We'll try to do this quickly because I know it's a Friday evening. You got bigger and better things to do than being here. So we'll start with Kayla, the order that people joined. And I'm going to ask you basically in about 5 to 7 minutes or whatever long you need. But I think 5 minutes should do, to introduce yourselves and to tell us a little bit where you are at with your studies, and also a little bit about your family background, where your family's from, and your connection to the Portuguese community. Okay, Kayla first.
Awesome. So yeah, my name is Kayla Ferreira. I'm a senior at Fresno State. I'm a liberal studies major. Planning to work at a college. So I would like to get a master's degree in higher education administration. I work on campus at Fresno State as well, and I really like it. So that's kind of where my career path is going. So my family's from the island of Terceira. My dad was born there. My mom was born here, but they're both full Portuguese. And I've been kind of involved in the Portuguese community for a while. I did Portuguese classes and Portuguese dancing with Mr. Borges, obviously, and it was really fun. I loved it. And yeah, I mean, we've been doing Luso. We've revamped our Tulare Youth Council as well. So that's been super fun. I was participating until I turned 18, and now I'm in the 2030s Council. So I'm still in my Luso roots there too. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Sure. Thank you so much. And congratulations on being a senior.
Thank you.
It's an accomplishment. And from Kayla, we'll go to Analicia. Analicia Dal.
Hello, my name is Annalicia. I'm currently a 2nd year at University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. A little bit about my family background. Both of my sides of my family are both from northern Portugal, the continent. So I love going back and visiting every few years, along with going to the Azores, of course. This year is my first year in the Azores, was super fun. Other Portuguese involvement right now, I've been doing Luso since I was born. So I've definitely been dancing for too many years to count. Also throughout Luso, I've held many local board positions. I held a state youth position while I was still a youth. I'm currently 19, so I'm no longer dancing in the youth program anymore, but I am now helping choreograph and help lead YC4 of Sacramento. So I'm still very involved with that. I also was on Laws and Rituals in the adult committee. So I'm still very involved, and I hope to get more involved in adult and 2030s as we go on. I'm also always at Portuguese halls around the area and in the Valley, just supporting whatever's happening there. And a lot of my friends are involved in those halls as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Annalicia. Nicole Bittencourt.
Hi, my name is Nicole Betancourt, and I'm 100% Portuguese. I'm a first-generation American citizen, and my whole family is from the São Jorge Island of the Azores. I am particularly passionate about Azorean immigrants in California, specifically in the Central Valley, where my grandparents live. They actually own a dairy there, and I go and help out quite often. My family is also very involved in the festas, and I've also been queen, and we do the Portuguese dance group at our local hall. And I'm a senior at Aptos High School, and at school I'm president of the Portuguese Club and founder. And I started this club to help Portuguese culture thrive. Even though we're relatively few in number within the club, I try to create a community where Portuguese individuals can properly be represented and we can share our culture.
And Nicole, any plans after high school, since you are a senior, right?
Yeah, I would love to attend a college and study Portuguese studies and like focus there. Yeah.
Have you started applying or not yet? It's still early, right?
I'm working on my applications, but I'm gonna
Okay.
apply soon.
Okay, well, good for you. There's a lot of colleges in California, and if you're thinking about outside of California, there's also a lot of things in the East Coast.
Yeah.
Lots of opportunities. And I should say that Nicole has done a wonderful job with PBBI. She's one of our top youth collaborators. She has done quite a few interviews with members of her family and other friends for our Portuguese oral history project. Thank you for doing that, Nicole. We appreciate it. And so let's go back in the same kind of order. We'll start with Caleb. There's been a lot of discussion today with different folks in the community, many of them much older than all of you are. And we're trying to bring different generations, and that's why we have all the different generations represented between now and Tuesday. Kayla, we'll start with you. How do you see, we won't always start with you. Okay. So I'm just going to start this one time and then we'll switch to Annalicia and then Nicole. How do you see the Portuguese community? I know that like you said, you're involved. One of the questions that we had this morning is, us older folks is, does it consume a lot of your time? In other words, some people think, younger people are not willing because of their time constraints. And if you're in a university setting or in high school, you have a lot of things that you're involved. You can't just be only the Portuguese club. You have other things that you're involved in. So does the older generation, that's going to be my question, first question, does the older generation expect too much out of you? What are your thoughts?
I don't think so. I think personally, if it's something you're passionate about, you make time for it. And it's something, just being involved in the Portuguese community and culture, I think is so enjoyable for me. A lot of my friends are in it. And so it hasn't really consumed too much of my time. And I'm always willing to help at festas and go back and teach at Tulare Union, teach some dancing, or, revamp the Portuguese club at Fresno State. I'm more than happy to do it because it is something I'm passionate about. And I think life is also all about balance. It's all about time management and being able to make time for the things that are important to you. So I would say no, I don't think it's too time consuming or anybody's expecting too much.
Okay. Annalicia, your thoughts on the same question, please.
Yes, I would totally agree with Kayla. I agree that if I'm passionate about it, and I know a lot of my friends are also very passionate about being involved in Portuguese culture and organization. So I feel like it isn't a big time thing if we're having fun doing it. And that is what a lot of us do, is we have fun attending festas and convention and being involved in different ways like that. So I feel like it's enjoyable to give our time and effort into growing our Portuguese culture.
Okay, wonderful. Nicole, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's super fun and to be a part of it. And I think the older generation isn't isn't pushing the younger generation enough. I think we need to do more. And that's also why I started like a nonprofit organization where I do like weekly blog posts and I try to bring people together and like inform them on the culture, because I think we're a minority in America, and I think we need to be represented more. And that's also why I'm doing the oral histories with Professor Borges. And I think we could do more as the younger generation.
Okay, so and we'll start with Annalicia this time. So the Nicole brought up a good point. So we can do more as a younger generation. Annalicia, what are your thoughts? Your generation and then the next generation. So not just those who are between 17, 18 and 26, 27, but the other generation that follows you, which is that's before you, which is folks who are between the end of their 20s and all the way up until 40. What else do you think that your generation can do? I mean, we have an issue right now, for example, as all of you know, our folklore groups are not as many as they once were. One time we had 14 of them in California. I understand now the folklore festival had, I believe, 7 present. So it's a big change from 14. Not that the others have disappeared, but they didn't go. For some of them are having issues. Even the ones that went, I've been told that there's some issues with the folklore groups. And so my question, starting with Annalicia, is what can your generation do, in your thoughts, to get more and more involved? I know the 3 of you are super involved, but you're kind of an elite. There's not, we don't have 50,000 Kaylas and Alicias and Nicoles, So what can your generation do, and how do you think we in the community, the older generation that still is in charge of certain things, what can we do to get more young people involved? What would you like to see?
That's a great question. I think that for a very long time, we've seen a lot of the early 20s kind of fall off just because, they're starting a new chapter of their life with school and growing a family. So I just feel like making sure that people stay involved throughout that section of life is very important. Even if they can't be as involved as the older generation, I think just making sure that they're still attending things and still have a voice in the community is very important. I also believe that a way that the older generation can help the younger generation stay involved is to make sure that they are given a voice, because as we can see a lot in Luso and in different Portuguese halls, that generation really does have a lot of power in the decision making. So just making sure that they are going to the younger generations and getting their input and their voice so that they feel heard and they would want to come back.
Do you think the older generation listens to the younger generation, or is it just, last year, and one of the persons, a little bit older generation than you, I think he was 38 at that time, he said, the younger people have to have a voice, and they're tired of just being the people who serve dinner and clean up dinner. So have you served dinners and cleaned up? And is that something that sometimes we expect too much out of young people?
Yes, I think that there is a little disconnect between giving them a voice and actually listening to the input. I think a big part of it is not wanting to break tradition and break culture. But making sure that the older generation and the younger generation can work together to find a good balance of keeping the traditions alive, but also finding a way to attract people to stay involved. So, which is a different kind of insight the younger generation can give.
Good points. Thank you. Nicole, your thoughts on the same thing. So what's I'm not going to repeat the question, you heard it, but how can the younger generation be more involved, and do the older people give the the younger generation a chance not only to, serve the dinner and clean up the hall, but also that's kind of a punishment. It's not an opportunity. But I've never understood that. Even when I was a teacher, I would always try, as Kayla knows, to bring parents in to help out because, why should we just punish the young people for have them do all the work? Let the parents also help. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the young people actually do need a little bit better of a voice and have more responsibility in order to pass the cultural legacy?
Yeah, I think they need to step in a little more. I feel that especially in like my community over here, we don't really have a lot of youth that are like attending the festival. I feel like it's a lot of older people, and I think we need to bring people together and inform them. I feel like tell them about the festival and the things that are going on, because maybe some people don't know about it, or I think we could have both generations work together, and maybe the older generation can teach the younger generation like how to keep the culture alive and how to keep the community going when they can't help anymore. And yeah.
Sure. Kayla, your thoughts on that?
I think Nicole and Alicia definitely brought up great points. Nicole, like you said, spreading the word is so important. And I think especially as far as getting more youth involved in younger generation, social media is huge for us right now and technology in general. So getting those festas and those vacadas on social media is so important. And just like people like me being able to just send the post to my friend, hey, let's go tonight. Like this is going on. It's just so easy for the younger generation to find out things like that are happening on social media. So I think that's something which I think, Senior Borges, you've done such a great job, like getting people engaged on social media and like technology wise. So I think that's been something that's been really great and super important. And like Annalicia said, making sure that there's that balance and trying to lessen the gap between the younger and older generation, which I think Tulsa's 2030s Council is also doing a really good job of that. It's like, you're not quite the older generation, but you're not a youth anymore, but you still have a voice and you could still be involved. So I think more programs like that, and like I said, social media and technology is super important for hitting that younger generation.
Let me ask you all three a question that was kind of a touch up on one of the prior panels, which is social media itself. But young people don't use Facebook that much. I know Kayla's on Facebook, but young people seem to use, of course, Instagram is much popular, and I understand that the concept it can be. But earlier one of the panelists was saying how TikTok is, of course, the big thing. Should we do more with TikTok with the Portuguese American presence? Should we have people tell a little bit about their experience or do a funny video about this or that? How do you see, and we'll start with Nicole this time, how do you see TikTok in the Portuguese community? Is it something that a younger generation could use to promote the culture and to promote connectivity independently where you're at in California and beyond?
Yeah, I think it is something that they could use, but I also feel that maybe Instagram would be more beneficial, because I feel like more of the older generation and like middle generation, the younger generation, I feel like everyone uses Instagram, and I think Instagram would be a little more beneficial. I feel like TikTok is more of like the younger generation, and maybe but I feel like it's worth a shot, and I feel like promoting in any way possible is beneficial.
So TikTok maybe just for the younger generation that uses it, in the teens and 20s maybe, and then but use all the mediums possible. What are your thoughts, Annalicia? How big is social media in your world and your friends, not just you?
I think it's definitely like a huge part of our generation, just entertainment wise and educationally. I think people learn a lot from social media, whether it's reliable or not, but I think that definitely getting information and activities out there is very important for the younger generation to become aware of. And I do think TikTok can be beneficial in a more in a way that it is just entertaining to watch. Like if we look at the Portuguese kids, just having those like skits that kind of show about like what the Portuguese culture is, but in a very funny way that can get other people to engage would be very beneficial.
I'm glad you brought the Portuguese kids. I have a question about that. Kayla.
I totally agree. I think Instagram would be a great like universal medium as far as like hitting the different generations, but I think TikTok would be great. Like just to kind of like get the Portuguese like culture out there and maybe like some Portuguese jokes or like what your avó says whenever you're eating dinner at her house, like very much like the Portuguese kids, just like little skits would be so funny and just a good way to kind of connect with that younger generation that maybe is Portuguese, but doesn't have as much like connection and understanding of their culture.
Okay, great. So you, and Alicia, it's your fault for this question. No, I'm just kidding. The Portuguese kids, let's talk about that. I'm a fan, okay, of the Portuguese kids, but there's lots of people in my generation that are not. They think it's too stereotypical. They think it's just making fun. They think it's just, very, very ethnic stereotypes, which, we have to be cognizant and we have to be aware of them, and we shouldn't perpetuate any kind of stereotypes, obviously, in any different culture. But I'm a fan. I think they do it. I'm not a fan of 100% of what they do. I'm 63 years old. I'm not a fan of 100% what they do, but I'm a fan of about 92%. That's pretty close, to being a total fan. But we'll start with Kayla. What are your thoughts, and what do you hear in different generations? Do you hear maybe the older generation, your avó and your avó? They're pretty open-minded though, people. But do you hear older generation not liking them? Or what are your thoughts on them and your personal thoughts on the Portuguese kids as well?
So my family loves them. Anytime they are within an hour of our area, they're trying to get tickets. They're trying to go. My grandparents even love them, but I do like people in my grandparents' generation are very much like kind of not okay with being poked fun of, but in my perspective, like you have to be able to laugh at yourself. Like most of these things are true and they are typical things that happen in a Portuguese household. And it's okay to laugh at and realize that like, it's just a joke, like it's okay. So personally, I love them. I think they're hilarious. My family thinks they're funny too, but I do see, and I know a lot of the older generation is kind of more traditional and maybe like are used to not having as much like comedy made of their culture. So I can understand where that idea comes from, but I think it's just kind of like supposed to be more lighthearted.
That's true. Yeah. Sometimes we take life a little bit too serious, And Alicia, your thoughts and about them, and what have you heard from your family members of all different generations, and friends who have older family members as well?
I like them. I've seen them a few times and it's very entertaining. I think my parents' generation seems to like them and find it entertaining as well, but I would agree that sometimes the older generation can find it offensive. I understand that, but I do agree that it is meant to be in a lighthearted and loving way. I also think that it's their target audience is younger generations, and it is meant to be a way to feel connected to the culture. So I feel like in a way, the Portuguese kids are really connecting to their target audience, which is the younger generation. And I feel like it's working because people seem to love them in those generations.
Nicole.
I really enjoy the Portuguese kids and my family does too. And I understand that some of the stuff is like stereotypical, but it's funny and it's jokes and people like it. And I think it's a good way to like spread the culture, and I really enjoy them.
Yeah, it's a fun way indeed. Okay, so talking about, first of all, do all three of you speak Portuguese? I know that Kayla does. And we'll start with that. So Kayla, you've learned Portuguese. Tell us how you learned Portuguese. I mean, you were in the classroom setting, but before that, you knew the language. So what is your comfortable level with Portuguese? And how did you learn it? And do you still speak it, or you speak it less than when you were, with the vol and the full? Tell us a little bit about that, and how important is knowing the language in your perspective?
So I was originally taught Portuguese from super young age. Like when I was learning how to speak English, my grandparents were making sure I was speaking Portuguese as well. So I kind of didn't fluently speak it when I was younger, but I was always learning it through my childhood. And I could speak pretty well in like middle school. And then going into high school, I took Senor Borges' class my freshman year. And I feel like that is really when I solidified like the proper way to speak, the proper way to connect my sentences, and just being able to speak more fluently to people. And then I took a trip to the Azores. So it was so important to learn how to speak the language before that. Even though a lot of them did speak English, I felt like I should be speaking their language since I'm visiting their culture and their place. So I thought that was super important. I tried to speak Portuguese most of the time that I was there. Since high school, I feel like I haven't used the language as much. Since the pandemic, we haven't been back to the Azores. So I was really looking forward to it. We had a trip planned, but then everything happened. So that was a bummer. But my dad's dad only speaks Portuguese and he lives in Tulare. So I do speak it with him whenever I see him. But yeah, I feel like I have kind of lost it, which makes me super sad, but I just don't use it as much as I did in high school. And it's a bummer, but I love it. And I think it's really important.
Sure. It's only natural. It happens all the time. And Alicia, your experience with the language.
Yeah, so I do not speak Portuguese. I can understand a little bit.
Oh, a Yolinda Adam is going to kill you. No, I'm just
That's
kidding.
what everyone says.
I'm just kidding.
I hear it all the time. I do not.
Yeah.
I think where I grew up, Portuguese was not in my high school, so
Sure.
I was able to do that, which I really wish that was an opportunity I could take advantage of, but I wasn't.
Mhm.
So I envy those people that live in communities that have Portuguese at their high school.
So that was going to be actually a question. How important, and I'll ask you already since you're here, how important would have been how important would it be to have Portuguese in high schools? We're discussing this in prior panels. We only have 11 out of 4,400 high schools in California. Only 11 teach Portuguese. How important you think is for your generation and the generation that's following you? How important is it for them to have the access to the Portuguese language at school, because families are no longer speaking Portuguese as they used to?
Yeah, I think it's super important. I know that there aren't very many schools that do it, and those who do obviously have a huge advantage. I wish I had that. Just as a teenager and growing up, you kind of feel like you don't have time to learn a whole nother language, but when it's required in classes, it becomes very
Sure.
beneficial. So yeah, I feel like having more schools offer Portuguese as a language class would be super beneficial.
Okay, fantastic. And Nicole, your experience with the language.
So ever since I was little, I spent a lot of time with my vovó and my vovó, and they only speak Portuguese. Well, both sides of my family only speak Portuguese. So I know how to speak it. It's not really the proper like way to speak it because I've never taken an actual class or course, and I can kind of read it. It's a little hard for me to read it, but I can kind of read it. And I really want to learn how to write in Portuguese. I think that'd be cool. And I don't have Portuguese language courses at my high school. I think that's mainly because there's a large Hispanic community at my high school, and I feel so there's a lot of Spanish classes, but there's no Portuguese, which is kind of sad. But once I'm in college, I would love to take a college course in Portuguese and learn more about the language.
Fantastic indeed. A couple of the questions in that perspective, which is, and I promise you we'll be done here in about 15 minutes or so, so you can go on with your lives. How all of you have been leaders in a different way. Nicole doing some of the Portuguese club she started on campus, and doing some of the Portuguese, the interviews for PBBI of oral history, and Alicia with, very involved in Luso, it's kind of a requirement in your family, right? To be part of Luso, as she mentioned, And Kayla, of course, being involved, she was a leader in our Portuguese club on campus at the high school level, being also involved with Luso. Do you see yourselves as possible future leaders in the Portuguese American community? And what does that mean to you to be a leader in the Portuguese American community? Does that mean being the president of the hall, being the president of a festa? The Valley's horrible about having women presidents of festas. We need to change that. Northern California, not as bad. Southern California, almost as bad as we are. But how do you see a role of leadership in the Portuguese American community? We'll start with Annalisa this time. And do you see yourself, for example, would you see yourself as a future president of Luso?
Yes, I definitely see myself continuing to be involved in Luso and in different boards. People can say I'm crazy for wanting to be president, but I feel like it might be in the cards for me. I just love what Luso has given me, and I've loved giving back to Luso in my past experience, and I hope to keep doing that. So yes, I believe I will stay involved and hopefully get more involved in halls as well.
Okay, so you wouldn't mind being, if the opportunity arose, you wouldn't mind being a president of a Portuguese hall for like 2 or 3 years?
Oh, 2 or 3 years? I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. I can do
A lot of them are 3 years or 3-year terms. That's
Yeah.
why I'm asking. But president of a festa for 1 year, that might be easier, right? Nicole, how do you see yourself? What kind of leadership? And you've taken a leadership role in, for example, you've taken a leadership role in the oral history project. You've taken a leadership role in your nonprofit that you've started. So what kind of leadership role do you see in the Portuguese American community? More of a traditional, hall, or expanding to other areas? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it would be nice to be like president of the hall or president of a festa, but also I want to continue with my research and like my nonprofit and like doing blog posts and informing people. And I think like now that we talked about the social media, I think it'd be cool to do something with Instagram and like start an account or something like that, and to reach more of the younger generation. And I would also love to continue doing oral histories. I think it's really cool to interview the older generation and hear their stories and gather their perspective on the community.
Wonderful, thank you. And Caleb, what do you see yourself in a leadership role in the Portuguese American community, and at what level? What is important to you?
I absolutely see myself taking on some leadership roles. I just can't even explain how beneficial and how passionate I am about taking those leadership roles, and just how much it really like impacted me as a person. One of my good friends, Marissa Nunez, actually started taking over our youth council this year, and she did it last year. So I agreed to help her this year as well. So I'm really excited to kind of be on that leadership with her and just give back to our youth council, because it really was super impactful to me. And I would like to hopefully get involved like at a high school level, helping out, giving back there would be great. So yeah, I would absolutely do that.
Fantastic, great. So see, we have young leaders. When people my generation said young people don't want to be leaders, we have 3 right here. Let's switch gears a little bit, and I will start. Maybe we'll start with Kayla this time. How important to you, because you mentioned that you the last 3 years, because of the pandemic, you hadn't had the opportunity to go back to the Azores, to go to Portugal. How do you see in your, and I think all 3 of you have gone back, we'll find out, but how do you see what is the importance of going back to the country that was the country of your forefathers, or your parents, or your grandparents, in most cases your grandparents? How important was that first time or second time, or the various times that you've been there? And did you have opportunities to converse and to hang out, as your generation calls it, with young people of your age, to see how they live? That's number two. And then the third part of the question, was there anything special? And I'm asking this one especially to Kayla because she had a very special moment, and she can maybe share that I think was kind of a lifetime opportunity that a lot of young ladies don't get, or young men. So tell me a little bit about how important is the connection to Portugal, whether it's mainland Portugal, the Azores, or Madeira. I think both of you are either, well, we have Terceira, São Jorge, or northern Portugal. So how important is that connection, and how important is it going back? And do you feel if you had not gone back, would you be the same person?
I cannot even explain how important that trip was to me. I think it was just so incredible you learn about all this stuff, you hear about all this stuff in the Azores and the Festas, and like you kind of have an understanding, but when you go and experience it for yourself, it is a completely different experience, and it truly was the opportunity of a lifetime. So I was chosen as the representative from Tulare, so I got to be in a float for the Festas, the São Joaninas, and it was just incredible. I met so many people. I went to so many different events, and it was just, I cannot even put into words how much I loved it. And also on that trip, we got to see where my dad was born and where he grew up, and just like meeting some distant family I'd never met before, and seeing all the different landmarks that like my grandparents have always told me about, and my mom and my dad. So it was just, overall, it was just such an incredible trip, and I cannot wait to go back. I just think it's very important for learning the cultures. Truly, like experiencing it is just a whole different thing.
And Alicia, your thoughts? I know that you've had contact, of course, in northern Portugal various times, right?
Yes. So my first few times I was very young and I don't really remember everything that happened there, but my dad's mom does a college course over the summer, taking college kids around Portugal and the Azores and teaching them about the history of Portugal. And being her granddaughter, I got that experience very young. So I think it was super important being able to see all the churches and different landmarks and everything like that, that really connects me to my culture. I also just loved seeing the lifestyle that they live over there, seeing family friends where they used to live and how much simpler life is over there, as well as like how much their festivals and their events have evolved with times. Is also very interesting, just hearing that they listen to sometimes more American music than we listen to at our events, which has been super cool.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, yeah. That's looking at those festas. There is a big difference. Do you think that maybe we should evolve a little bit, or for our purpose, it's important that we continue the Portuguese? I mean, we have American music all around us, so let's keep the Portuguese at the hall or at the Portuguese events. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm all down for all Portuguese at Portuguese halls.
Okay.
That's what I go for. I want to hear the Portuguese music. I want to dance. But I think it can give perspective for the older generations to see how Portugal is evolving. So
sure,
if it means that getting festas more lively by evolving some aspects of it, I think it's very doable with keeping our culture alive.
So you dance the Vita?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. See, all right. Okay, Nicole, your thoughts on connecting? I don't know if you've been back to São Jorge, if you've ever been to São Jorge, and how important that would be.
I actually have never been to the Azores, which is really sad. I was gonna go like last year, but COVID and everything happened. And I've heard a bunch of stories. I've seen a bunch of pictures. My grandparents, they grew up there. My parents were born there. And I think it would be super cool to go. And like, I think conversing with others and speaking Portuguese, I think my Portuguese would improve. And seeing the churches and like family I've never met, I think it's really important to the culture, and it would really add to it.
Indeed. And I'm sure that if it was offered, all three of you at even at an academic level, that would be interesting to do what Alicia had the opportunity to do with Yolinda, and I call her by her first name because I know her. So with Yolinda Adão, Professor Yolinda Adão, I should say, from in an academic setting, that would be very important as well, and hopefully we'll have more and more of those programs. There is I think Eduardo Eusebio had his hand up, so I think he might have a question. I'm going to try to make put this on where he can be allowed to talk. But before I get to that, I hope that it is. Maybe Eduardo can send me a note on chat saying that he indeed does have a question. My next question is something that I had, and another great mind of the Luso American world had the same question. He texted to me, which was here in my list as well, which is, what does it mean to you to be Portuguese? I know that's a hard question, but what does it mean to you to be of Portuguese background, in this case, Portuguese a descendant of having parents or grandparents or great grandparents? How would you define that? And what's the difference between being Portuguese or being another ethnicity? How do you define yourself as a Portuguese American? What does it mean to you? It's a hard question, I know, so I'm going to give it to Kayla because she knows me, so she can go ahead and call me all the dirty names later. But what does it mean to you to be Portuguese, and how important is that in your life?
Gosh, you got to put me on the spot. I think, to me, being Portuguese it really given me a sense of belonging. I just see so many different people, but they can come together and celebrate as one, celebrate the same things, the same culture, do the same dances. And I think it's just so incredible. And Portuguese is such a strong culture, and I can kind of see that within myself. I feel like I'm a very strong, outspoken person, and that's definitely traits that you see in the culture. So to me, I think it's just really, it has given me a sense of belonging and a sense of unity.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's a very good answer. There we go. Wonderful, wonderful. I should say it's a very good answer. And actually, the president of Portugal, as most of you have probably seen somewhere on social media, because he's a selfie king. He's worse than I am. The president of Portugal actually said one thing that there's a few things I disagreed with him, but there was one thing I agreed with him, which was he said that the Portuguese people are teimosos, which I think you all know what the word means, even if you don't know Portuguese, which is stubborn. And so that's one part. And I can tell you that Kayla can be teimosa. She would convince me of things that I said I would never allow this to be done in the Portuguese club, but she did. And Alicia, what does it mean to be Portuguese to you? How important is that to you, other than being teimosa? Okay.
That I definitely am. You can ask me about that.
Okay.
That is such a hard question because it's just my way of life almost. I grew up in it, so I don't really know anything different. But really where I get a sense of oh my gosh, I love my culture is just conversating with my friends who aren't Portuguese, and they are just in awe of what we do and what we've been able to accomplish and keep alive after this many years. In California, I also think that it's really made me who I am. I think the opportunities I've gotten, especially through Luso, with public speaking and leadership roles and teamwork, have really evolved and really made me who I am. So I can definitely thank Luso for most of my personality. So I just think being Portuguese is just who I am, and I wouldn't want it any other way. And I just love everything that we do.
And you even like being the teimosa part.
Yeah, it gets me what I
want. That's the best part. Nicole, what does it mean to you to be Portuguese, and how do you live that Portuguese spirit?
I'm definitely proud to be Portuguese. I think it's part of my identity, my cultural identity. It's definitely who I am. And I think our culture, our celebrations and traditions are really unique and amazing and really different from any other kind of culture. And I think it's really cool.
Fantastic. I just have one last round, and it is to ask each and every one of you, and we'll start with Alicia this time, so Kayla doesn't get mad at me. And we've already started with Nicole as well a couple of times. So wanted just all of you in a few minutes, and take as long as you need to, but in 2 or 3 minutes or so, what would you say to your colleagues, to your peers, those who are of Portuguese background, and quite a few of them that are not involved as you are, that are not as excited about the culture or the language or the identity as you are, and obviously all of you are, because we could tell by your responses and by your excitement. What would you like to tell those who are maybe watching? And if they're not watching, we'll just take this one clip and maybe make a TikTok out of it, right? But those of you, those who are watching and those who are not watching, but maybe their parents or their grandparents are, what would you like to say to young people who are not involved and not as excited to them? How, maybe a word of encouragement and a word of, and you all have different reasons why. That's what's so exciting, because you all have different reasons why you're involved, and they're not exactly the same. One is a little bit more Luso, one is the Portuguese Hall, one is this, one is that. And so why, tell your friends, your peers, those who are your age group, 18 to 30, what basically a word of encouragement, and what would you advise them to try out, maybe to get involved in the Portuguese community? So we're going to start with Annalise, as I said.
All right. First of all, for those who are not involved and have never been involved, the first step is obviously learning about it. Get educated on your culture, and especially the Portuguese culture in California and what we have to offer here. And just check it out. Come to a convention, come to a festa, see what we're all about. It is so much fun, and it is what I look forward to every weekend in the summer. And just staying involved is super important. I think that what really ingrained like my love for being Portuguese was being able to attend these events very young. So for those with very young children, get your kids involved, start them young. Have their roots will grow so much deeper in their Portuguese culture and their love of it. So get involved, get your kids involved, and stay involved. It doesn't have to be a huge time commitment, but just staying in the culture and in that group is very important.
And then Alicia, one follow-up question, because I've heard this in my years of teaching, which is, but it's so boring. What would you say to someone in your age group to say, but it's so boring being the Portuguese things?
I would say you're crazy.
Okay.
I think it's so much fun. Our culture is so fun. The dancing, the events, just all coming together at these events, and sharing culture, sharing food, sharing dances is so important, and it is so fun, not boring.
Okay. Nicole, what would you say to your peers that are seniors in high school or starting out in college? Because what would you tell them as well? And what would you tell those who say it's boring as well?
Yeah, I think definitely get involved at the Portuguese events and the Portuguese Hall. Maybe learn from the older generation on how you can get involved specifically. And I think it's really important to keep our celebrations and traditions alive, because I don't want them to be, we don't want them to be lost through the passage of time. And they're definitely not boring. They're super fun. So I think everyone should go and try it out sometime.
Now, Kayla, your thoughts on that as well?
I would say find your roots, and it's never too late to find your roots. There's people even my age that I went to high school with that are Portuguese that aren't that involved, but it's not too late for them to attend a festa and find out where they're from and what those traditions are on that specific island or in that city, wherever they're from. It's never too late. And like Annalisa said, it's super important to get your young kids involved, absolutely. But also like at an older age, you don't have to feel discouraged either. You can always get involved. You can always attend a festa, attend a vacada, talk to a friend who's been involved. And I think it's important for us as those people who are involved to be approachable and welcoming and willing to be spreading the word and letting people know what we're all about. So, and if people say it's boring, I think there's so many different aspects that maybe if you don't like dancing, maybe you would like a bullfight, maybe you would like to do something else. So what's fun for me may not be fun for someone else, but there's so many different aspects to the Portuguese culture that you can definitely find something that you will enjoy.
I said that was the last question, but I have one more. Here we go. Some of us in my generation, and even between your generation and mine, believe that some of the festas and some of the events are in danger of not continuing, in danger of you who are in your late teens or early 20s of not having the festa, or the same event, or different events, maybe obviously not in the next 4 or 5 years, but maybe maybe 25 years from now, maybe when you're in your mid to late 40s. Because some of the festas that at one time had 30,000 people, now they may have 10. And some of the festas that at one time had 10,000 people now may have, 800 or 1,000. Would it concern you, and how do you see the festas and the events? Would it, would it be disheartening not to have all these things that you have grown up with? And I'll start with Nicole this time, and that will be the last one.
Yeah, I think it would be really disheartening to lose the festas and the celebrations and the traditions. And I agree, like some festas are in danger. Like I know some Portuguese halls are like, they don't even have girls to be queens. And they're struggling to like keep the tradition alive. And I think in 15 to 20 years, like it's hard to say. I think if we work hard enough, I think there could be a chance to like keep it alive. But and I really hope that like younger generations step in and we can keep going and keep the community together.
Yeah, indeed, there is that danger. You're right. There is that danger, especially in smaller communities. Some may have to do some merging. There's can be maybe just 3 festas in the same area, and maybe they'll come down to 1. And Alicia, your thoughts on that? How would you feel? How would you feel if some of these things change drastically, that would either disappear or not be what you were used to when you grew up as a child?
Yeah, that would be super disheartening. I just think that some of my best memories and core memories were growing up and at convention and at the halls for festas, and I really hope that they are able to maintain and grow throughout the years, because I want generations after us to have the same experiences that we did. I think a huge part of it is people going out to festas in their area all around. Just because they grew up affiliated to one hall does not mean they only go to that one festa. So all the halls just going and supporting each other to make sure that all of them stay active and supporting each other would be really great.
And Kayla, your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I think it would be a huge bummer and a huge loss in our community if we lost those festas, because honestly, like I made some of my lifelong friendships at festas growing up, and it was just so much fun, but also such a great learning experience and being able to connect more into my culture. So I feel like us being like the incoming generation is really important for us to fight for the things that we got so much out of. So like I got so much out of the festas. I feel like it's kind of my responsibility to make sure we don't lose those, make sure the younger generation gets those same experiences that I did. Even if that does mean having to evolve and change a few things, like we can do that. We can adapt. Times are changing, but it's important that we really try our hardest to keep those traditions alive.
That's a perfect way to end, and I don't have any better words than those. So thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Annalicia. Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for your leadership. Hopefully you can entice at least another 20 to 30 people that are not as involved as you are and as excited, not just involved, but also excited as you are. And hopefully this can also serve as a way to reach more and more young people of your generation. Thank you all for taking this time. I appreciate it very, very much on behalf of Lose American Education Foundation, on behalf of PBBI from Fresno State. We appreciate you. We thank you for your commitment to the culture, and we hope that you continue and that your generation can foster and continue this. As Kayla said, I think it's very important, and Alicia mentioned this as well, and Nicole, with the involvement, I mean, things will not be the same, but the culture can transform itself and still be vital part of everyone's identity. Thank you all. Take care, and we'll see everyone tomorrow morning. Thank you.